is Jesse. I'm a project associate with Valley Vision. And we're one of the organizers of today's regional workforce advisory meeting, which today's industry focus is on retail, hospitality, and tourism. And a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to share your faces. We encourage folks. And actually brings me to my other point. If you're not planning on talking, don't forget to mute yourself. Submit any questions or technical difficulties to the chat box, and we'll be sure to address them. And any questions throughout the event, there'll be different periods where we'll allow for Q&A. So any of your questions on the chat box, we'll be sure to get to them. And this meeting is also being recorded, just for, to also share after the meeting. So anything that you may end up missing, no worries, we'll have a recording ready. And now I'll pass it on to Josh.
Thank you, Jesse. Thanks, folks, for joining us today. We're excited to have you all here. Want to give a big thank you and shout out to the team at Valley Vision. Jesse, Renee, and Caitlin have been instrumental in this up running. I will be, if you see me ask to unmute you, it means I just muted you and then accidentally clicked it again. So. Anyways, we are really excited to have a great group of people here today. We have some great keynote speakers. We have a tremendous panel. The goal here is really to be sitting down and talking about the wild and sweeping changes that have occurred in these industry sectors. It's every corner of the planet has been affected by the global pandemic, but I think it's safe to say that hospitality, tourism, retail, leisure activity of all sorts have been affected as much or more than any other sector. So we're really keen to hear from our experts today to see kind of what changes have occurred across these sectors, what we feel is kind of more temporary and may go away in the months and years to come, and what is going to be more of a sticky change and things that should drive, for us, the next phases of community college, adult ed, and K-12 education in these sectors. I have a sweeping title. It's long and wordy, but my colleagues and I work with various industry leaders in sectors and the community colleges across Northern California to better drive industry engagement to improve outcomes of career and technical education for both the colleges, the students, and the industry hiring those folks. So I think without further ado, I'll pass it off to Renee. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Josh. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're here. Just like Josh had said, it's been a very challenging year for your industries, and we were having quite a vibrant discussion as we were getting ready to launch this meeting today, just between the different panelists about the different shifts in workforce. So we're glad to be bringing an amazing panel to you today, along with the experts that Josh mentioned. We do want to give credit where credit is due. This advisory is being hosted by the California Community Colleges, with funding specifically from Los Rios through strong workforce funding. And these advisories are brought to you by partners including the North Far North Center of Excellence. We include Sierra College, Yuba Community College also in planning efforts, and then the 4 workforce boards that make up the capital region. And that includes Golden Sierra, SETA Sacramento Works, North Central Counties Consortium, and YOLO Works. We have an agenda which we sent out briefly before this meeting, and it is here with you with just one small adjustment. Just want to give you a look at what's coming ahead. We're going to be hearing from Mike Testa. He is our keynote speaker from Visit Sacramento here in just a minute. Then we're going to have an industry insights panel discussion. We are going to give you a break, a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to hear from Dr. Robert Eiler about industry insights and economic and policy shifts that are affecting these industries. We'll then go into some breakout discussions, and we have some leading questions that we can all work to together. And then we'll share what we learned in our breakouts, and Josh will wrap us up with some opportunities to partner in what's happening with the community college system. So I think without further ado, I will introduce Mike Testa to you. Mike is President and CEO of Visit Sacramento and the Sacramento Sports Commission. He is dedicated to leading the Sacramento region as an attractive travel destination, as a dynamic place to live and work. He has been responsible for a number of initiatives in the Sacramento area, including creating and expanding music and food festivals, the Farm to Fork Capital branding, the Tower Bridge Dinner, and other events. He is also responsible for creating the relationship with the Paris-based Michelin Guide to generate a California dining guide that spotlighted 14 of our Sacramento's restaurants. Mike has seen a lot over this last year, and we're excited to hear from him from his perspective. I will hand it to you, Mike.
Great. Thank you, Renee, very much. Yeah, we've all seen a lot, I think, over this last year. I keep telling people when people ask me how it's going, I always say it's probably not the best time to be in the tourism industry, but you know, what's bad typically gets better, right? So I'm going to start with a little bit of review and kind of what we do as an organization. I'll give you a bit of doom and gloom from the past 13 months, and then I'll look forward to the better times ahead. So let's just jump into it. Who Visit Sacramento is. Our job is to bring visitors into the market, have them spend money with our local businesses, then go back to wherever they came from and hopefully return the next year. Tourism, the largest driver of tourism in Sacramento is the convention center. And what's interesting is we have data that shows if we host a 400-person convention at the convention center, Placer County hotels feel that ripple effect. So imagine when we host a 10,000-person convention. You know, people talk about our conventions valuable in Sacramento. They are incredibly valuable to the entire region. This just isn't about the city of Sacramento. It's about everybody else. And internally at Visit Sacramento, we always talk about tourism and what it means to the community, because people ask me all the time, well, you know, we're not New York, we're not Las Vegas. Is tourism real in Sacramento? And it is. We get more than 15 million visitors a year. They spend more than $3 billion into our economy. And so at Visit Sacramento internally, we say that tourism isn't about the tourists. It's about driving revenue for the residents that live here. The money that comes in improves the quality of life for our residents. So that's a big deal. And just to illustrate that for you, when you look at some of the projects around town that are being done, whether it's the renovation of the community center theater, the Memorial Auditorium, the Powerhouse Science Center, the $47 million investment into Old Sacramento, all of those projects are funded by hotel taxes. So the more visitors we bring in, the more infrastructure we build for the people who live here. I think that's a really important point that a lot of people don't get. Tourism is very beneficial to those of us who live here. So let's talk a little bit about Visit Sacramento in normal times. What our job is to go after conventions, sporting events, music festivals. We produce the Farm to Fork Festival, the Tower Bridge Dinner, and a number of other events throughout the year. That's different than most of my counterparts across the country. We feel like we need to produce special events to drive attention to our market. We don't have a Golden Gate Bridge. We don't have a Statue of Liberty. So we make our own news, and that has paid off well for us over the years. Like I said, it is a $3 billion industry in Sacramento. And part of the way we attract attention is by generating media across the country. We have a PR firm that represents us in New York City. And I always laugh when people tell me, did you see the great article in Sacramento in the New York Times? And my response is always, well, yeah, we've been working on that for the last year. I know our chief communications officer, Carrie Miskett, is on this call, and she's the one who pitches those stories. Sometimes they take about 2 weeks, sometimes they take about a year. So the goal for us is to make sure that the great things that are happening in Sacramento are communicated to the rest of the world, and we've been fairly successful with that. We use a variety of mediums. It's not just the newspaper pitching. We've got an amazing podcast. Our social media team is incredible. And I'm very proud of the work that we do here, in the sense that I think we've kept very current with how people are collecting information and how people are being communicated to. And I think we've done that very well over the last couple of years. The other thing we do is we look at what's been successful and we try to build on that in the market. So before COVID, let's talk about Sacramento really quick. We knew our convention center was closing for an expansion. It closed in the middle of 2018 and then closed entirely in 2019. So in some ways we benefited because, you know, as my counterparts across the state were canceling conventions, we already didn't have any because we knew that our building was going to be closed. I say that's a little bit of a silver lining because obviously we lost everything else in terms of visitation with leisure and sporting events, but it was somewhat expected and our hotels were somewhat prepared for it. So pre-COVID, we had a number of hotels coming online. We had a Hyatt Centric, a Hyatt House. We had 3 Hilton properties, Randy Perigary's Fort Sutter. The good news is that construction on those projects and the convention center continued during the pandemic. The governor deemed our projects as essential. And one of the things people have said to us, now you have this, you're gonna have this expanded convention center, that means you'll get bigger conventions, right? Our response is we need hotel rooms to go with that expansion. There's only so much space to house our delegates. So the more hotel rooms we get, the bigger the conventions we do. So I'm very pleased that over the last 13 months, the construction on those hotels has continued. Renee mentioned the Michelin Guide. That's something that we went after as an organization. I always tell people that there were 4 cities in the United States that had Michelin Guides: New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco. Sacramento was the 5th city in the country to be added to the Michelin Guide. Now, other cities in California were with that, but Sacramento was the catalyst to create that California Guide. So that says a lot about our restaurants. You know, everybody expects me to say how great the restaurants are, but when Michelin comes in and says that it's an entirely different voice of credibility, and they don't rate markets that don't have good food scenes. So it speaks very well to the chefs that we have in this market. We also book major sporting events in Sacramento, whether that's March Madness basketball or USA track and field out at Sac State. Again, the goal is to bring people into the market, but to also provide some entertainment for our locals. We also host Aftershock, which is the largest hard rock festival in the United States. It was a 3-day event pre-COVID, brought about 40,000 people a day to the market. So that's a great thing. We were on the cusp pre-COVID of introducing a number of other music festivals to the market. We were going to launch a country music festival last year in 2020, and we expected to launch an Americana music festival this year. Unfortunately, COVID has put those programs on hold. They would be at the same level of Aftershock. The idea is to bring in major artists to do a 2, 3, 4-day festival that we would ultimately grow into. So that was really the disappointing part. The mayor and I were set to go to South by Southwest to film a number of things at that festival, and his State of the City address was going to be about music festivals in Sacramento. So I can tell you there was a mourning period at Visit Sacramento when all of that went away, but we hope it's just paused, and we expect to get back to it sooner than later. So the pandemic and tourism, obviously there was a big impact on what happened. This industry, between hotels and restaurants and everything in between, employs well over 100,000 people. We saw a number of hotels close. The Hyatt closed, the Kimpton closed, the Westin closed. That's something that, you know, if you had told me that was going to happen in a million years, I never would have thought you would have been right. But obviously the impact was huge. Thousands, tens of thousands of workers laid off, single hotels laying off 300 people at a time. You know, Lynn Moorfeld has said before that obviously some of those people have had to get different jobs, but as we start to bring people back, hopefully they'll want to come back to the industry. For Visit Sacramento, we are funded by hotels, so our budget was dramatically cut. We went from a staff of 42 full-time employees to 23 full-time employees. And what else changed for us is our residents became our audience, not the visitors. We had to, and everybody's really annoyed with the word pivot, I'm sure at this point, but that's what we had to do. Our audience changed. And so we needed to try to do some campaigns for our local restaurateurs. The Tower Bridge Dinner obviously is a well thought of culinary event. So we changed to the Tower Bridge to Go. We had 30 different restaurants participate in that. It seemed to be a resounding success with those restaurants. We also, since we couldn't do Aftershock, we did an event on the Tower Bridge with a local band called Dance Gavin Dance. We partnered with our promoters of Aftershock and did a live stream concert on the bridge that close to 200,000 people tuned into. So great exposure for the market. It's actually a really cool venue to do a concert on, the Tower Bridge is. So we're trying to figure out how we can do a concert there again in non-pandemic times, because it was a great postcard of Sacramento and really good energy. So how do we keep moving and kind of looking forward? Like I said, the construction at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center continued during the pandemic. Our first event is scheduled for Memorial Day weekend. We're very excited about that. It's the SAC Anime, which is very similar to Comic-Con. Hotels are finally starting to book, thanks to Lynn Moorfield and the California Hotel Lodging Association. There is a ton of pent-up demand, as you can imagine, for weddings. The hotels are telling me they get calls on a regular basis from brides and grooms that are ready to do their weddings. There's a lot of celebrations of life. There's a lot of family reunions that haven't happened. So there's a ton of pent-up demand for that. For the conventions that we had to cancel in the first part of the year because we expected the building to be ready, which really didn't matter because the pandemic was still in full flourish anyway. We moved a lot of those events to either later in the year or to 2022. So Sacramento didn't lose those events. We just postponed them a little bit. So from a return of tourism standpoint, we're ready to market to visitors. And in fact, the folks from my team on this call would tell you that we have campaigns ready to go. We've got a video shot, the video that I'm not showing you today because we just got it late last night. But we have campaigns ready to go for when Sacramento reaches the orange tier, and we have campaigns ready to go for when the market fully opens on June 15th. We are not waiting for the sign that we can bring people back. Instead, we've done the work in advance so that when we're told visitors can come back to the market, we can just press go on that. We are preparing for our Farm to Fork Festival. We are preparing for Legends of Wine. We are preparing for the Tower Bridge Dinner. All three of those events, we are moving at full speed until someone tells us we can't. We are planning that 2021 will be the return of events in Sacramento. And I mentioned Aftershock a few minutes ago. What used to be a 3-day event will be a 4-day event in 2021. So we expect more than 140,000 people to attend that event. And what's great about Aftershock is about 60% of the attendees come from outside of Sacramento. It consumes close to 70% of all our hotel rooms in the entire market. So a great event for Sacramento and a great year to have Metallica headlining 2 nights of those 4 days at the festival. So we're very excited for that too. We will host the World's Strongest Man competition, which oddly enough happens on June 15th. It's like we drew it up that way so that we can have spectators at it. It's not something Sacramento has ever hosted before. It is broadcast to 70 different countries and 500 million households across the world. So another great snapshot for Sacramento. Plus, it's kind of a fun event. It's, it's these giant guys, 8 feet tall, pulling buses down Capitol Mall. So we expect it to be a very cool event visually. We expect it to draw crowds in. We also are hosting our first Ironman competition in October of this year. A big deal to host an Ironman event. People who are in the triathlete world will tell you that. We expect thousands of competitors to come here. They will bring people with them. It is a huge event in late October for Sacramento. And the great thing about World's Strongest Man and Ironman is these are both the first year of 3-year contracts with them. So there will be more of this to come in future years. So a great way to get into it this year. I was looking at the numbers of what we have to look ahead. I just want to make sure I'm not going too long here. The numbers of what we have to look at between July 1st and December 31st, just with what Visit Sacramento has booked, that doesn't count individual bookings at hotels. We have more than 30 groups coming to town, more than 125,000 people, more than 135,000 hotel rooms rented for that, and they'll spend more than $53 million into our market. That doesn't count the Farm to Fork events. That doesn't count some of the other things that we're working on. So between now and the end of the year, to have close to $60 million spent into this market by visitors will be a huge deal for these businesses. People think tourism is about the hotels. It's not. I will tell you that some of the restaurateurs, when the convention center closed, said that their business went down by 40%. So that's just the convention side of it. That doesn't count leisure travel, sporting events, or music festivals. So tourism is a huge part of this economy, and it's been greatly missed. So as we look forward, on this slide, you can see the Junior Olympics. We have booked the Junior Olympics for 2022. That's something that we've hosted before, but it's a huge deal. Brings about 8,000 athletes and their parents to Sacramento. And again, as we look in the near future, those bookings are critical for our city. So like I said, we've got a lot of things booked between now and the end of the year. But if I look at 2022, we already have 50 meetings and conventions booked. That'll bring $91 million in visitor spending to the market. That doesn't count the sporting events like World's Strongest Man and Ironman. That doesn't count the music festivals. And that doesn't count events that are already in the market like the California State Fair. One of the things I'm most proud of, and I'll leave you with this as we look forward, Sonia Bradley, who's on this call today, has been our Chief Marketing Officer for many years and has done an amazing job in broadcasting and educating people in Sacramento to the rest of the world. She's recently moved into the role of our Chief Officer of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We feel like that's a really important initiative for Visit Sacramento and frankly for all of Sacramento. We looked at how we're selling this city. We looked at how we're marketing it to visitors, and the question came up of what attributes are we selling? Are we representing everybody in this community? Are we touching every neighborhood in Sacramento? And frankly, are we reaching every visitor that we want to come to this city? So Sonia has done an amazing job of putting this program together, but what I expect to see and what we all expect to see in the coming years is more equity in the messaging that we do, but also looking at different organizations in Sacramento and making sure that their boards of directors are diverse, that they have men, women, people of color, and everybody represented there. We cannot speak with a unified voice unless everybody's represented. And I'll leave you with this. Patrick Mulvaney used to say all the time that the bigger the umbrella, the more people can stand underneath it. And that's what we're trying to do with Sonia's new role. We're trying to increase the size of our umbrella so that Sacramento is represented with the people who truly live here. That's the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. And I guess the last thing I'll tell you is I'm really optimistic about what's coming up. We've got a lot of really cool things on the calendar in Sacramento. So it's been a really tough year. The future looks very bright, and I'm excited to get to it as much as you are.
Thank you, Mike. That was awesome. I think between widespread vaccinations and that presentation, we can all hopefully breathe a little sigh of relief here and take a lot of pride in this community and everything that's going on and the tremendous growth that's been done by your organization and by all of our great establishments and venues. We do have a minute or two. I haven't seen any questions in the chat. So if anybody has a question for Mike, we would love to take it at this point.
You think it's just because I covered everything so well, Josh? There's no question.
I think it's a testament to the comprehensiveness of your presentation. So thank you again, sir. Much appreciated.
Well, and thank you for the positive message. I think that is the overwhelming part that I'm taking away from this is it's good. It's really good to hear some really good news. And Trish Kelly was on the call. I'm not sure if she is still here. Trish, are you here? She just was sending me a message to thank you for your efforts on branding Sacramento as the farm to fork capital and for the partnerships you've done. There's Trish.
Oh, looks like we do have one question there. Mike, what is happening with the closed hotels from Tim Stallings?
So they've all reopened with the exception of the Westin. And I say that not having looked at it in the last week or so. We expect that hotel to open soon. The biggest challenge with the Westin was, you know, they have only about 100 rooms, so it's a rather small hotel, and they really do a ton of wedding business. So obviously that's impacted them greatly over the last year. You know, the Hyatt and the Kimpton, the hotels pre-pandemic were at about 85% full. And at the heart of the pandemic, in the middle of it, they were at about 7% full. So the drop has been tremendous. Most of them now are at 30, 40% full. So we're going in the right direction. And every week, that occupancy ticks up a little bit. So it's getting to the place we want it to go.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, we are right on schedule here, so I think I'll seize that momentum and move us ahead to our industry panel discussion. And that's me. So yeah, we've got a great panel today. We're very excited. I want to thank everybody in advance for joining us. We have Tim Stallings, the Vice President of Operations for our local MLS soccer team, Sacramento Republic Football Club. We have Bahar Abullarade, a Human Resources Business Partner for Raley's. Alycia Harshfield, the Executive Director for the California Restaurant Foundation. We have Bobbin Mulvaney, co-owner and longtime restaurateur in the area, Mulvaney's B&L. And we have Lynn Morfeld, the president and CEO of the California Hotel and Lodging Association. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to go through our questions here. I'll go ahead and post them in the chat as we ask them, just so we can kind of keep them fresh of mind. Just get that set here. So first off, and I think just to keep things flowing through, let's just move down in the order of everybody's presentation on the screen there. So we'll go from Tim down through to Lynn. So for starters, if you guys can each, just for a few minutes, please provide a brief overview of your organization or business, including your role, the main services or products, kind of background on your workforce, including the rough number of employees, how you recruit them, general skill levels, educational attainment, what you want to pick and choose. We could probably spend almost all day discussing those specifics, but take it away, Tim, if you're ready.
Sure. Tim Stallings, Sacramento Republic FC is a USL team, which is Division II in soccer. We're aspiring to get to MLS, which will be huge for the market, and that would include building a downtown stadium. Had some hiccups in that recently with investor pulling out, so COVID has impacted our club in ways very similar to the way the hotels have been manufactured. We did not implode, but we certainly took a big setback, and so now we're back in business. We get actually hosting our first match on the 24th. So we'll have Real Salt Lake in here, and for a friendly match, we get to open with 20% fans. So which is great for our part-time workforce, our guest services team and our game day workers, of which we have about 40 of those, and then about 50 full-time employees, not including the athletes. Those part-time workers a lot of times use our matches as supplemental income, as well as just it's a fun event to be in. So in the past, we have always had job fairs and try to just pump them up and just try to make it seem like a really fun place to be. But one of the problems that we've had, and the reason that I started talking with Joy Hermson about this, is the qualifications for a younger person to be in a guest services role where they can empower the fan and also make the fan feel really welcome, was missing. We'd love to hire just all the retired people that are have spent a whole career learning to be amazing conversationalists and amazing people on a service side, but we can't. So that's what we're looking for, is a way to get the small but important attributes trained into people in a very short time across the 3 pro sports teams in Sacramento.
Thank you, Tim. And we were actually right on the heels of the pandemic. We were working on developing some internship opportunities around their street teams. So obviously we had to shelve those efforts, but we're hoping to get those up and running here before too long. So thank you, Tim. Bahar?
Hi, everybody. I work with Raley's as an HR business partner in the local Bay Area, which is where I'm currently situated. But we also obviously have stores in the Sacramento market as well as Nevada. So with that, we have about 13,000 current team members that are working with us. We hired an influx of about 8,000 just during the pandemic to master through our online sales and some of the changes that had to be made to pivot us to more shift more focus on our e-cart business, which is what our online model is. So we range anywhere from the 16-year-old bagger who's working on our stores to some of our more senior folks that have been with our company for over 40 years that work in our stores, also at the distribution centers in Sacramento and our production bakery. So the skills vary across a really wide range. But one of the things that rings true that we've seen as kind of an area of opportunity is emotional intelligence, in terms of really connecting with people. I think you kind of spoke to this, Tim. The ability to make those connections meaningful with customers and with the peers. Gen Z is all about inclusion, and just thinking about working in a multi-generational industry and workforce, it can be challenging. And so just really being able to provide people with that skill the soft skills, if you want to call them that. They're definitely necessary, but something that we've tried to fill in for our team members.
Thank you. Yeah, soft skills is something that the community colleges are very preoccupied with. We have a great curriculum called 21st Century Skills that's kind of been through a couple phases and is actually the core of a guest services boot camp that I'm teaching to folks in Sierra County all this week. So it's fun to see them tackle those skills. Alycia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alycia Harshfield with the California Restaurant Foundation. So we are the philanthropic entity of the California Restaurant Association. And our work, we have three program pillars. ProStart, which is working with high school culinary arts students across the state of California, which I think will apply more to this conversation. But we also provide scholarships for college. And we have a resilience fund right now providing grants to restaurants, strengthening their services and coming through the COVID pandemic. And through Restaurants Care, we provide relief grants to food and beverage employees that are facing a crisis, an injury, an accident, or death in their family. So basically, our goal is to serve the people at the heart of the restaurant and food service business. And again, we do that through those three pillars. So when it comes to ProStart, our high school program, we work with about 140 to 150 culinary programs across the state, and we provide the enrichment experiences. So that's been very interesting during the pandemic to change in-person high impact events to more virtual events. But really, we focus on helping to prepare young people for first-time jobs and careers in anything food service and hospitality related. A lot of life skills training, job readiness preparation, connection to industry so that we can introduce the concept of networking and really build skills. And we partner with the California community colleges and the California State University system as well. It's been, that's a very important partnership. And we see the young people in our ProStart program, our high school program, going either directly into work or a combination of college and career. So that we're preparing talent. That's really our focus for the industry. Changing lives through restaurants.
And they do a great job of it. If you haven't heard of the ProStart organization, I encourage you to check it out because they do some tremendous work with our youth. Bob and Mulvaney, the Mulvaneys really probably need no introduction in this town, but.
Thank you. Well, our restaurant is a small mom and pop, and we practice and have for many years. My husband and I, what attracted one another is that we really practice what farm to fork is, and that is using things within our reach. And it's been a wild, wild adventure with the BNL. I was trained up through the regular ways, and to kind of freestyle it, I see some of these issues that are really important now. I've had the opportunity to work with the Plates program through St. John, which has just been amazing, and they have their own catering company and restaurant. Salvation Army, workforce development. I get to sometimes help Alycia with the ProStart group, which I love those kids. They are so smart. I want to hire them right there. So the thing that I think was right on is emotional intelligence. That's the most important thing for me. I can teach you knife skills, but I don't need to teach you knife skills. You spend a little bit of time in my kitchen and you're going to have hours and hours of knife skills. I can't teach you emotional intelligence, or I can, but it's going to take a while. I wish you were prepared. More kids were prepared for that, along with, ethics and really that critical thinking. And I think that the pandemic has proved out to us, we're small. I can't even, we're in our 40s, probably 40 employees right now. And every day, hired someone yesterday, 2 interviews today. We can't hire enough people right now for as much as we could do. We're working with a really, really limited staff. And the good news about that is they're the best of the best is what we've gotten down to. But they're tired, we're tired. I was at a mindful retreat in Arizona last week, and it's a Hyatt run. And I have to tell you, I saw the general manager, resort manager with their plastic gloves working every meal function. The thing I love about Hyatt, and that's the training that you get with a restaurant or with a hotel, is that help where you can, see what the next issue is, anticipate the next step, anticipate the next need that someone may have. So I'm really looking forward to you spreading this word and us having the opportunity to maybe, tweak some things in our curriculum to help these kids be more prepared.
Thank you, Bob, and absolutely, that is our main goal here. Can't get enough soft skills in there, to be sure. Soft skills may be a bit of a misnomer because we know those are critical skills. Last but not least, Lynn Morfield of the Cal Hotel and Lodging Association.
Great, thanks, Josh. I'll echo everyone else, the soft skills, the emotional intelligence. We're in hospitality, and we've all gone from, basically trying to be the most intense service industry that we possibly can be, very hands-on. Then we went through the pandemic where it's like technology is king and everything's touchless, and let's take the people out of the equation, to now we're getting exactly back to probably where we were. And I think it's going to boomerang back even further. And when you get down to it, there's definitely various grades, but a bed's a bed's a bed in a hotel room. The difference is the people in the service. So, we want our people back. We've got about 235,000 people in California that work in hotels, and over 122,000 of them experienced at least a layoff last year. So we've been devastated. Now the challenge for us is going from 0 to 100 in a matter of moments, and trying to match that with the demand that we have coming back. So, now that the pandemic is waning, I should say, and the vaccinations are going absolutely marvelous in California, we get people that look out the window and say, hey, it's sunny, let's go to San Francisco this weekend. Hey, it's sunny, I'm in LA, I'm going to go just to Orange County. And so we're seeing that demand spike in 1 to 2 days. That was even worse before the pre-pandemic. So that's creating incredible scheduling issues for us on that side. We just can't ramp up. And so right now, I would say that the industry is a little bit depressed in terms of our ability to service our guests. We have to keep our occupancy down because we don't have people to clean the rooms. We don't have people to check them in. We don't have the food servers. So, there's always that kind of balance that's going back and forth. We're very pleased to partner with the community colleges. We have a hospitality foundation, just like the Restaurant Association has. We give out about $100,000 in scholarships a year. It's primarily a scholarship organization, and to get that networking going is key for us. And then what we try and do is get down through the community colleges and all the education systems in terms of getting our industry leaders exposed to that next level of leadership. So, we really have our 122,000 people that were laid off weren't just sitting around waiting for us to call them back. So we have the distinct potential of losing a generation of our entire workforce at this point. That's significant for the hotel industry. So we want everyone back that we can possibly get back on our team. We have all kinds of pandemic training and cleaning and health protocols and everything that's new in the state. And to bring in a new employee back and have them go through that training again, we need to get our guys back to work as much as possible. But right now, food service, front desk, housekeeping, engineering, pretty much anything. The average hotel in California, I'll just leave you with this, has 3.3 job openings. So there are 19,000 hotel openings right now. 82% of those are, 82% of those are full-time positions. So those are positions, they're generally somewhere around $15 to $20 an hour or more, and they all come with benefits. And a hotel's like a mini city. So we've got a great career path for everyone. You can go to housekeeping, you can go to front desk, you can go to concierge, you can do banquets, you can go into sales, you can go into marketing, you can do events, you can do meeting planning. So there's lots of options for everyone coming into the industry, and you can always plug in. And just like the food service side of it, it's incredibly portable. So, it's wonderful skills for students and anyone in the education system to learn, because if they go somewhere else and if their situation changes, those skills and training can be portable to another location and destination. I know several chefs that surf around the world. They're in the Caribbean, they're in South Africa, they go to Europe, and they do the seasons, and that's their life, and it's great to watch that happen. And they started in the community college and the Pro Start program, a lot of them, and went through that program. So bring everyone that you can possibly. We're hiring right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I think everybody on this panel would probably attest to the fact that these positions were needed filling before the pandemic, and that has only accelerated these challenges across the board. So I want to, with our next question, going back to Tim, dive into a little more of a look at what you guys have really been dealing with on the micro level. So please describe some of the critical challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has presented to your operations. What are some of the key changes and adjustments that your organization or business has made to meet these challenges?
Well, the key challenge is that we hosted 17 soccer games with 100 people in the house instead of 11,000, and which meant we had no F&B, we had no fan experience. I mean, we're in the job of our people, confuse professional sports with the sport that's on the field. That's the entertainment. What we really do is we provide memories, right? And so that's where this emotional intelligence and soft skills are probably more important to everyone. And we have a very, kind of forward-thinking office and front office staff that finds that to be critical and valuable as well. So what we did during the pandemic is we pivoted into doing more things for the community. We opened up a couple of soccer fields. We carried I think we raised $80,000 to give seniors Raley's bags of groceries. We delivered all those ourselves. We did. We just focused on that, and so that was able to give our front office staff, our full-time staff, some way to sort of give back to the community, and also some way to stay busy. But our part-time staff, we just didn't have anything for them. And so the struggle that we have is that we got back some key people. Some of our older employees are a little nervous right now coming back into an environment where there's potentially congestion and crowds. And so they're sitting on the sidelines right now. And then frankly, the stimulus checks have been difficult for our security team and our guest services team, because folks can make as much money sitting at home as they can make coming to work. And so to some extent, that's been a screening tool. I think Bobbin said that she's got the best of the best. And some of that, I'm sure, is not just because it's an amazing organization, but also that the not so best have been falling through the cracks, right? So those folks that don't already have the built-in skills and the work ethic are not getting experiences. So we're losing this generation that we're losing on work skills is going to really impact us for the next 2 years. So because continuously working, continuously growing, and continuously training is how we get better as an organization, and that's our biggest fear. And so this is one of the areas where we think that we're going to have to replace on-the-job experience with concentrations of training. So that's kind of the challenges that we're facing right now.
Thank you. Bahar?
Yeah, well, for anybody who's grocery shopped in the last year, I don't have to tell you, supply chain management has been one of our biggest challenges. But we've kind of overcome that hump a little bit and seen the other side of it. So that's trending in the right direction. Still not perfect, but definitely something that our leadership team and our store leaders are more cognizant of in terms of making sure, you know, they have a plan and they're strategizing, not just reacting as they might have been prone to doing beforehand. So I think it was Bob and you talked about critical thinking. That's definitely one thing we also saw, you know, in our store ranks specifically. So you're thinking of, you know, maybe the folks that didn't necessarily get a 4-year degree, haven't gone to formal education or through formal education. Maybe they've done a retail management certification through our, you know, Fresno City partnership, but that might be the extent of really where their kind of widespread strategic.
Good order, Max.
Oh, sorry, somebody's. You know, and so for that, it was really giving them the tools on the spot to understand how to identify those gaps and react properly and plan and strategize ahead of time. And, you know, that tied into the technology aspect. Again, don't really need to tell a lot of you probably who shopped, but we really had to pivot quickly to an online model, and that skyrocketed overnight, right? On March 13th, our sales literally quadrupled the next day, online sales, because people didn't want to come into the store. They didn't want to have to be in crowds. They didn't want to, you know, have to wear a mask, all of the things that people didn't want to have to do. The online solution was definitely a good pivot for us, but that also meant we had to hire 9,000 people in a really short amount of time to fit those needs. And we did that. And it was hard, not gonna lie. There's a lot of logistics and hindsight, a lot of learning that we can now say, if ever we have to do this again, we know what to do different. But, you know, and that's how we learn, right? And we just actually published our first impact report. If any of you are interested in looking at that, it was published on LinkedIn, and we shared it on our website just 2 weeks ago. And there's a lot of great data around how we prioritize our safety for our team members, our customers, you know, all of the things that we still were able to do during the pandemic with regards to leadership development still took a priority, because we didn't want our leaders in our stores to think that they were just, you know, having to go day in and day out and dealing with the minutia of, you know, COVID management and crisis management. We wanted them to still feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, Mike kind of shared that in the beginning with what's to come. And we really tried to make that a prime, you know, point of conversation for every single leader, every single team member throughout the pandemic. So it wasn't just about focusing on the now, but it's also looking to the future and all of the great innovations and tools and things that we'd like to do as a company, and more importantly for each of the individuals in question to make sure that their needs were met as well. So the last thing, just to answer this question too, is back to the customer experience. You know, with the technology aspect, our Gen Z and millennials, and you know, all of the more tech savvy folks definitely didn't have a problem with the online model, but where it posed a challenge was when the online model didn't work, right? There's always something. The computer breaks down, the system crashes, the order didn't get, you know, input correctly. Then insert the human element, and that's where it created a breakdown for us, where thankfully we have seasoned, experienced folks both in the stores and at the support center who were able to intervene and, you know, kind of do some damage control. But when you scale that across 150 plus stores, that's not really scalable and it's not sustainable. So really trying to understand how we can give our, you know, front end folks and even some of the younger leaders that don't have that formal training, the skills that they need to be able to triage those things on their own without any further escalations.
Thank you. Alycia.
Hi. Okay, so I think we have a perception challenge that we've perhaps never faced in food service and hospitality. And that is, we've always told our students there will always be a job for you at a restaurant or in this business. And all of a sudden there wasn't. And it exposed a vulnerability that we've never really had before. So I think that's going to be a challenge, and something that we can do as we work with students in all grade levels and at the college experience is to talk about that this is still a viable career opportunity for you, whether it's in restaurants, hospitality, retail, and there are jobs out there, certainly, as we know. I think I read somewhere that about 30% of restaurant workers are looking to other business sectors for jobs. Like, they don't want to work in restaurants anymore. And that's because it is a challenging job at times, but it's rewarding in many ways. And I think this vulnerability, as I mentioned, that was exposed, that, you know, all of a sudden you couldn't gather, you couldn't dine in restaurants, and there was such a dramatic cut in, you know, in staffing. So I think trying to overcome that perception is really going to be important, and to talk about the careers and how we are an industry where you can start in the kitchen as a dishwasher and be an owner of a business. There is a pathway to entrepreneurship and great careers. For our organization, the pivot, well, we had to rethink everything. I mean, you know, like so many businesses, we had to reimagine everything we offer, from our our events, like a Pro Start competition that was 250 students set to meet a week after we all shut down. We had to suddenly make that a virtual event. High school leadership conference, developing curriculum for educators so they could get the students to show up. I mean, that's another challenge that we saw with high school culinary arts programs and high school in general, is students just not even showing up and zooming in. So how do you make it interesting? Just sort of how to figure out industry engagement, which would be the piece that brings the curriculum to life. All of those things we had to try to come up with. And we learned some things that I think we'll employ when we're back to more in person, because it's efficient and we can reach schools in remote areas versus some of the great opportunities only happening for students that are near, you know, Taco Bell's headquarters or something like that. So I think we've learned some things that will be great for the future. With regards to restaurants care, you know, it was like one day the lights turned out and 900, I think it was 900 to 1 million restaurant workers didn't have jobs. And how are we going to help them? So we had to quickly raise money specifically for a COVID-19 relief grant to restaurant workers. And we were able to help around 1,200 individuals, but we had to sort of narrow in on who is it that we're going to help. And we figured that where we could make the most significant impact was to help those that did not qualify for other financial assistance. They were going to slip through the cracks. So that was how we responded. And then now with this resilience fund that we're offering, which is grants to the business, that's our second sort of way to help out at this time. But yeah, I mean, my hat's off to the educators and to the restaurant owners and the businesses that have made so many creative and amazing changes to keep things going. But we've always had to talk to parents about, it's okay if your child wants to have a job in restaurants or hotels. And now I think we're going to have to fight that even more. And that is, I think we can do it. There are amazing stories about the successes that can be accomplished. So skills, students need to learn to be, I think, flexible, problem solve, demonstrate initiative, and sticking around will pay off.
Thank you, Alycia. Yeah, I know before all this started, really just building these pipelines to bring more talented, motivated people into these industries was key. That has clearly escalated as well. We're already getting some really good questions from our educators, kind of about some of the more technical aspects here, but I think focusing on building pipelines is the key. And I know we will take a chance to get audience questions here shortly. If we need to circle back and follow up in written form, we will do that. But please, Bobbin, about critical challenges and changes and adjustments in the pandemic.
Oh boy, I feel like a ballerina with all of this pivoting going on. Not only from the pandemic, but y'all remember those fires and the smoke, and we had more closures. I honestly, even with this one right now, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I would love to feel overly hopeful, but I still, I'm a little guarded, to say the least. One thing I think is really, really important is I really believe in teaching resilience and not coping. You know, I don't cuss as much as my husband, but I will say that, you know, if you ask someone, a student, to cope with something, you're asking them to take this pile of crap and put it in their pocket and cope with it. And I'm saying you don't have to put that in your pocket and cope with it. You can be resilient. You can let somebody feel the way that they feel about something, and you can move forward with knowing what you know. Maybe you learned something out of it, but let's move forward with it instead of just carrying that around with you all day. I am really blessed now that I look back at it, is that I've actually have 50 years of getting paid in the restaurant industry, and another couple before that not getting paid except for the roof over my head, as my mother often reminded me. And my family had a 24-hour restaurant and a banquet facility and a country western bar in Central California. And I washed dishes every night through high school, every Friday and Saturday night for sure, from 10:30 until 2:30 or 3, every Friday and Saturday night. And what it made me learn is that the most important person in the restaurant is the dishwasher. I have found that to be true in every single job I've ever had. And I like to equate it to working on a pirate ship, because I do work in an old school house. I'm not proud of it, and I'm hoping that we can grow. We've got young people trying to push us into growth. But if you were on a pirate ship and it was sinking, the guy with the bucket in the bottom is really the most important person to me at the time, right? Stewards and dishwashers can find everything. It's such a great learning place to start learning from. So both sides of my family have always been entrepreneurs, mostly because we're just uneducated. We've had to find our way, and it was the way to happen. And I think that some of our life experiences, for any of you that was raised through the Vietnam War, I was having post-traumatic stress from the rioting that we had. It was really, really difficult, because I remember driving over the Golden Gate Bridge and through Berkeley during those times. And then we lived through 9/11. I worked at wasn't the Hyatt across the street. I was at the convention center across the street from the Capitol at that time. And the resiliency that we practiced in and being fearful, I think, you know, has made me a stronger woman for sure. And I think one of the scariest ones was the recession in 2008. So I have a 33-year-old daughter in this business, born under a prep table. And she's had a pretty good 33 years that these kind of things she hasn't had to be an adult through these, or, you know, process through these as much. So I find my biggest challenge is mental health right now. And we've been working on it about 2 or 3 years, really, really seriously. And let me tell you, sometimes I feel like I'm barely putting a dent in it. That's why this emotional intelligence is so, so very important. You can be the smartest person, 7 years of university, and you get into my kitchen sometimes, or my business, and I'm like, good Lord, we didn't learn common sense. We didn't learn to speak without words, to use nonverbal communication, which is so important. I find in our industry, we get a lot of, not so much anymore because y'all are educating everyone, but it used to just be a lot of misfits, people who couldn't get jobs elsewhere, people who wanted to, wear their pajamas to work. And it really, truly, that part has changed for sure, but it makes us an always training ground. We have dyslexic people, English as a second language people, all kinds of learning disabilities. And what I've been blessed with is to know a lot of people learn in different ways. And I don't care, there's not enough policies or guidelines to teach them. Sometimes, they just have to hear it in a different way. So I kind of focus on that because I was highly dyslexic. I am not a big reader. And so I've had to learn my life through feeling and knowing what's going on around me. And I tend to have more patience for those types of people in my business as well. If you know too much, I'm just going to let you do it then. So I appreciate people grooming these young people to think like an entrepreneur. I opened my first business at 26. For those of you in Sacramento, on K and 24th, I had a catering company and an old bakery. And, you know, the skills that I learned from working in all these different places, someone said all the jobs, oh my goodness, until I was 24, I was between ARC, trying to go to culinary school, Tahoe, and I had a boyfriend in Maui. So, you know, I'm a little bit of a slow learner, but I'm sitting at the same table as my husband, who went to 7 years of universities and, you know, food science and everything else. We just took way different paths to get at the same place. That's all I got.
Robin, thank you so much. I think we can all get so caught up in what's coming next week and next month, and drawing us out to the historical impact of this, and kind of connecting to some of the other times that life has just been changed and upheaval. I'm 34, so I very much connect with 9/11 being right in our early kind of development, and this is the first real kick in the seat that we've gotten. So just excellent perspective. Lynn.
Yeah, I think most of it's already been said, and some excellent comments. I think that one of the biggest things, or two of the biggest things, is all of a sudden we had to cross-train everybody. So we've got sales managers cleaning rooms. We've got you know, people in the back of house that were in finance are now standing at our front desk, trying to fill those. And I think it really changed the industry in terms of the silos that we had. It was like, hey, you're in front desk. That's where you're going to work, and you're going to be a front desk supervisor. And now everything has changed. And this past year, we've had nothing but uncertainty and inconsistency. You know, as Bob had mentioned, we had wildfires, we've got indoor, we've got outdoor, we don't have outdoor anymore, we got to go back. Oh, and it's going to change this weekend too. So that ability to be dynamic and to maneuver has really kind of come across in our industry, especially, and just, you know, be a good athlete is what I call it. So, you know, that's really what we want to hire. Again, we have a lot of different jobs. If it doesn't work out at the front desk, I'm pretty sure we can plug them in somewhere else, and their abilities will be able to be well served within the hotel environment somewhere else. So that's one thing. The other thing that we really had to deal with is, you know, we're hotels. So we had a health pandemic, and we've got people sleeping in our hotels. Obviously a huge issue. We've always been clean. We've always been safe. Knock on wood, we've never had an outbreak at a hotel in California, even though we've been hosting homeless. We've got transitional housing, assisted facilities, et cetera. You know, the industry has done a fabulous job and stepped up. But all those things that we had to pay attention to, and all those things that we had to do differently, taught us that we could learn new skills a lot easier than we thought we could. So, you know, before we started, you know, who knew what we would be doing all the way through this? And now to Bobbin's point, it comes down to a mental health and a job burnout. I mean, for a while, you know, you just take any of us, but we're probably working a massive amount of hours, weekends, and, you know, doing something that you didn't do previously. Now, all of a sudden, that's where we need to go with it. And we're trying to follow around a government that is not very good at doing things fast, and they're not doing very good at doing things new. Now they have to do things fast and new. And so you can expect the hiccups in which we saw. You know, a year later, they kind of have it down pat now. We're getting a little bit better at it, but it's still an issue out there. So trying to plug in people where they go and what serves their strengths, rather than pigeonholing them and sending them up through a silo in that particular department. I think that's probably one of the best benefits that this has come out of this. And, you know, we're going to change some more. And, you know, in another 6 months or so, when we get back to normal, whatever the heck that is, you know, we're all unprecedented. When we get back to some sort of normal, I think that a lot of people are going to kind of look around and say, hey, is this what I want? And, you know, you had a lot of people that, you know, had health scares within their life and within their circle of friends. And people died. A lot of people died from this. And that changes people's perspective about how they're going to work and where they're going to work and what they're going to do. And, you know, we've had people that are just like, look, you know, geez, I just lost my mom. And, you know, hey, this is, you know, just a job. So how am I going to get through this, or do I really want to do this? And so we're helping them along with that as well. And that's really key. And I think that's going to continue for a while. You know, we had a lot of people have health issues, a lot of people in the hospitals, and again, a lot of deaths, and we need to work through that. You know, this is 9/11 on steroids. So this is, in our industry, this is 20 times worse than what we saw in 9/11, 20 times worse. So, you know, it's going to take us a while to get through it. And, you know, for the hotel industry, I don't think we're going to see the backside of this for probably 3 years in terms of employment, and probably 5-6 years in terms of what we do. So, you know, one day we're going to get off Zoom calls and we're going to meet again. We're going to be able to network and all that. And I think that that's a wonderful thing, but, you know, there's a lot of pent up demand for that. And so let's train people out there so that we can make people do that. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you for a tough but very honest answer. We want as much optimism as we can get, but we need to be very serious and realistic about these things. So I'm working to synthesize some of the questions we're getting from the audience into the ones that us preparers thought we were all smart asking moving forward and planning this event. So we want to make sure we get as many good answers from you folks as possible. So going back to Tim, this kind of came in part from Dr. Cynthia Summer from Los Rios. Now and moving forward, what skills besides soft and employability skills, for lack of a better term, are most important in your industry? And kind of adding on to that, are there any specific community college programs that you would like to draw from? I know you guys are looking for just about anyone motivated that you can get.
I think that, so first of all, I have 2 kids that just went through Sac City College and on to universities. Well, I have one that they're both actually taking classes, both at 4-year universities and still taking a class at City. So that's awesome. What I've learned from this is the preparation that they got in high school with logic and critical thinking skills is why they're very good at figuring things out. So my daughter works at a little juice bar called Nectar that's right below our office in Midtown. And you would be surprised how, dealing with customers and making decisions and having a homeless person walk in and having the lights go out and having the internet go down, it requires that you just have to be able to objectively look at the problem, break it down, and make a solution for it, right? And so that critical thinking skills, I mean, it's going to apply the same way whether they're working in a hotel, a convention center, a sports stadium, or a job as a anthropologist, which is what my daughter's degree is, or an engineer, which is what my son is going for. So those kind of skills are, I used to wonder, why don't we teach people how to, balance their checkbook, which is a need we don't need anymore, but it was a life skill that was needed at one time when there was a thing called a checkbook, right? And so this idea of finding the life skills that make people successful in their 30s and teaching that to people when they're 18 or 19 or 20 is going to make our employees better. So we have, one of the concerns in pro sports, outdoor pro sports, are things like lightning, weather events, safety events. We're a soft target for for someone doing some real damage to a lot of people. And so the eyes on the ground, while we're asking these people to be, provide a good guest experience and listen to people and be, strong emotionally, we also want them to make really good decisions and be observant. And so that, I think, applies to a lot of people. It doesn't seem to be coming with the kids that are in their 18 to 24. I mean, it's just not generally something that we're finding with people that have not learned this through other experiences. So that's what we're looking to do, is just try to find a way to find the actual job experiences, how to write emails, how to follow up, how to do all of those sorts of things, how to make good critical thinking decisions. We want to make that as part of our core training.
Thank you, Tim. Bahar?
Yeah, I can speak on my personal experience. I did not take a change management course formally, even through undergrad in business, until a master's program. And in any industry, I think learning how to manage change, right? Whether it's on the end user experience as an IT person, or as a leader, or in the healthcare, or whatever industry they might be, change management is a really critical piece of making sure that end game is where you want to be. And I don't really find that is something that's taught across different subgroups, or even in JCs, or thinking about vocational programs and things like that. It may be more focused on the skills necessary for the job, but not so much the critical pieces that you need to consider to make sure that is successful and executed the way that you want it to be. Which goes back to what Bobbin was kind of talking about with the resiliency and the growth mindset. That's also something that's lacking in this particular age group with Gen Zs. Thinking about what the long game is. There could be some more involvement with that in education. I know with K through 12, there's a big focus in the last 5-10 years on social emotional learning, which ties into the EQ piece, but not in a way that really teaches people how to lead that for others, right? It's more about managing your own emotions, learning how to deal with the trauma, but not so much how to help others through that, which is critical if they are going to become a leader, or if they're going to be working on teams with people in whatever industry that might be. That's a critical skill that kind of ties into some of that change management and emotional piece as well.
Thank you, Bahar. I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Self-awareness. Moving on to Alycia.
I love that change management. We do a job readiness training called FIT, Force in Training, and it's about landing a job, being a good employee, and being a leader. And I think that change management is something that we've learned we need to probably include in this training about adaptability and long-term thinking and how to be resilient. I think that's really such an important point. And when it comes to maybe skills and we always come back to in the hospitality industry is that sort of positive attitude, dependability, and adaptability. Those things have not changed. I think they're more important than ever now. So continuing to reinforce those in ways that might be through project-based learning, perhaps, or where students are having to we're having to work as a team, they're taking leadership roles, they're problem solving, they're innovating. All of those things are going to be super important, I think, continuing forward. To get to that resilience, and also talking about culture and creating culture. If we're creating future leaders, we need them to think about what kind of an environment do they want to work in, and what can they do from at the most entry-level positions to when they gain more responsibility to be those leaders and create a culture of fairness, equity, and caring for people. All of those things are going to be really, really important. So yeah, I think it's just we're turning up the dial on these things that we've always known were important, and got to find ways to connect the dots so that things that are otherwise somewhat innate, like how do you teach it? that's a little bit of a challenge too, I think. But I think there's some good opportunity there.
Thank you, Alycia. And we were getting so much good information. We just have about 15 minutes more for this panel. So I just want to ask to try to keep our answers to about 2 minutes here. But Bobbin, please take it away. You are muted, my friend.
Sorry. Well, that brings me to my point. I need more management training and POS. People understand the POS system all the way back. People who not only can read a labor report, but know how to use it every single day. I'm not big enough that I can look, from 40 feet down. I have to live it every single day. And I need management who understand that and understand the importance that inventory is our bank. You got to turn it into money. That's the only way we're going to make revenue, is your job revenue generating. And all of the jobs should be in some way revenue generating. So I think that the team building is so awesome. And this is a weird thing, but I got to tell you, team building, play hide and seek with these guys. Because if I hire one more young person that comes in and asks me where the flower's kept, I'm just going to, suggest that they look for a big tub with a lid that's white in it and probably says flower on the front. These are the kinds of thinking that they need to be ready for by the time they actually come into a kitchen. How do I find the things? Flour's always going to be by the sugar. The butter's always going to be in the fridge. So yeah, the kids are coming from an environment of 12 years of asking questions, and there's never a stupid question. But truly, there gets to be a point where I want some people who are thinking, and I don't care if you flip 7 lids on beds, just find the flour. You'll always know where it is then. So that's really it. I really appreciate that we're all kind of on the same page as far as the training and the team building as well.
Thank you, Bob, and I appreciate it. And for my part, it seems like we just keep coming back to what the community colleges have attempted to do with the 21st century skills, adaptability, resilience, self-awareness, communication. So I think we really need to go back and look at those, but conversation for another day. Lynn.
Yeah, real quickly, just 2 things. One is kind of, I guess, pivoting off Bobbin's comments. I always try and go and tell the students, I have my own set of problems, okay? Bring me a solution. So, they come in and they're like, hey, this, and they expect me to solve it. And so they don't have to do that critical thinking. It's like, okay, that sounds like a big problem. Hey, what do you think you should do? And they're like, what, me? And it empowers them, gives them a little bit of ownership on the job. And it works really well. For students, in terms of change, and for managers, one thing that I was shown early on was everyone crossed their arms. And when you cross your arms, now cross them the other way. Okay, and it's really difficult to cross your arms the other way. You're always kind of fumbling for how to do it. And it just doesn't feel natural. That's what change feels like to your employees. That's what change feels like to students coming out. It's in a different little realm to them, and it takes them a while to get used to it. So we've got to recognize that and be able to have that patience and help them find that flower, and make sure that they know where it is next time, so they don't have to ask next time, and so the next person doesn't have to ask next time, and build on that from there. So change is going to be a big thing, and it's going to be a part of our lives now for the next couple of years, more significant than it has ever before. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Lynn. On point as always. So we just have one more question here. I've omitted a few in the interest of time and getting as many good answers as we can. And before I ask this question, I also just want to point out that Dr. Summers really wanted to draw attention to the fact, which I think is critical, and thank you for doing so, that sometimes we look a little too much at the idea of youth coming out of the community colleges. So we just want to underscore that we have learners of all ages, all skill sets, displaced workers, ESL learners. So really looking towards that much more broader student population. Do you have any other suggestions for how we on the education side, not just community colleges, but adult education, K-12 even, can better prepare our students of today and tomorrow for jobs in your industry outside of just the skill specifics? Yes, and as Kim points out, we also have incarcerated folks, just very broad populations that I think are great pipelines for these jobs. Tim.
I don't know if this is something that is directly a class someone could take at a community college, but a big thing that's happening in our industry right now is related to the social justice movement. And so within our league, United Soccer League, we're doing the same training for our part-time workers to try to understand other people's point of view, and to understand how to behave around different racial cultures and people from different backgrounds. Because you can imagine that if we lean left, we're going to irritate all of our fans that lean right. And if we lean right, then we're going to irritate all of our fans that lean left. And people are constantly trying to use sport as a billboard or as a way to communicate their thoughts, and it often goes into really the wrong direction, right? Into instead of having a nice discussion on something, people sort of jump behind one thing or another. For example, we're right now deciding as a league whether we're going to play the national anthem before the players walk on the field or after they walk on the field, like it's traditionally done in American sports, so that we don't put all the players in the position of having to choose whether they're going to stand or kneel, for example. If you're the only person that stands and everyone else kneels, then that puts that player in a difficult situation. So what we're doing, and I think this can be done everywhere, is to try to take that communication skills and that observation skills and just those understanding and teach it to people, because it'll help them at work. In my workplace, it's mandatory, but it'll also help them in life.
Thank you, Tim. Bahar.
I appreciate you resetting the focus and kind of the broader, awareness of how vast this group of folks are that come out of our education system. So thank you. But with that said, definitely learning how to work with and potentially lead a diverse group of people is critical. And think of every industry, every concentration under, the different areas of, the degrees that people might be pursuing. There definitely is that element of cross-cultural communication, cross-generational, and then even think about neurological. I think somebody had spoken earlier about how we all learn differently, and just having the ability to absorb what that can look like. And also, as somebody who might potentially be on a team with other people or leading other people, those skills can come out of these types of programs where they just have a little bit more awareness of how they fit into that, and then also how they might be, the ones pulling the puppet strings for the rest of their team, so to speak. But that's a critical element that would be, helpful for success.
Thank you. Yeah, and I keep bringing it back to 21st century skills, but there's two modules around kind of social awareness around diversity, gender versus sex, ethnicity, disabilities, different generations. So we are working on that as best we can. Alycia.
So I keep thinking about managing expectations too, and understanding the pathway and opportunities. So one thing that we like to talk about with students is that you're going to hit a wall at some point, and how do you use your communication skills and problem solving skills to sort of push through, and that communication is important, and going to someone that you work with are sort of understanding that that will happen at some point in the honeymoon phase. This is, when you're starting a career or a job, and how do you sort of continue to go through. So perseverance, I suppose, is part of it, but understanding and managing expectations to me is really important in a positive way, so that you know that you're the driver of also your career, and that you can continue to shift and change and take on more responsibility, especially I think in food service and hospitality. There's always a place to go and always growth opportunities.
Thank you. And at the risk of beating the drum too much, the 21st century curriculum also includes a ton of kind of self-advocacy and career directives, so that they're not just thinking about the future and now, but they're thinking about future next steps and creating the kind of future they want. So thank you for that. Bobbin.
I don't have very much on this that hasn't been said, but I will say that I appreciate the comment about incarcerated folk coming back into. I have found that in working with this clientele of bringing back into the workforce is that it's much easier. Like, it doesn't matter what I do and my husband, we're all for it. It's all great. But if my staff and my management staff is not into it, it is not going to work. And so I generally try to find a trainer to train the trainee. And I know that sounds like, yeah, everybody does that, but no, this is really someone who's going to notice. I had a woman come in last year, and she literally stood in the kitchen and was afraid to find the flour. Well, I realized, because I knew what program we took her out of, that she actually had been in prison for a while, and she would be afraid to open up every cabinet and to look around. So I did have to visually look at her, see what the problem was, think about it, and then put someone on her that would walk her through the entire place, from the bathrooms, hand sinks, every single thing. So if you have one person that they could go to, if you're going to work with this this diverse clientele coming out of some pretty tough situations, it's important that you have someone with a passion to help them. Otherwise, you know, they could be saying, well, they're late 15 minutes every day and we're ready to fire them. Instead of saying, well, she's taking the bus, she's taking the train and having to jump on her bike and then ride here. Why don't we just change the time that she comes in? In fact, change it by a half an hour, give her time to cool off and get a drink before she comes into work. So, but we wouldn't know that unless we had someone one-on-one that they felt comfortable in talking to. That's all I have.
Yeah, you're just knocking it out of the park every time. Yeah, working with these diverse populations, really having both champions on staff and people that are really aware of the distinct obstacles that they face is something that we can all do better of, both on the education side and on the industry side. So thank you. Lynn, you want to bring us home on this?
Yeah, sure. I think it's all already been said. You know, your curriculum is changing, and we appreciate your ability to do those changes and to adapt for the workforce. The only thing that I would add is if the community colleges can build those connections as early as they possibly can, so that we can actually show the students and the educators what a hotel is and what our individual industries are. And I think that seeing is believing, where they can get a little bit better grasp of the possibilities. So any networking, any back of house tours, any of that kind of stuff, the earlier we can start that and get them to look at it, from my position, I think that's probably a good thing. And they'll also, you know, on the other side is some people may not like that environment, and then they'll know. And so in the long run, that's going to be good for everybody, but at least they'll know as early as they possibly can.
Thank you. Yeah, 100% career awareness. We'll have down the line, I'll be talking about a couple other opportunities to partner in the future. Also, my state director, Joy, had led some ideas earlier pre-pandemic, right before it, about even creating kind of remote, digitalized, even almost kind of simulated look-arounds facilities and exploration. So anything in the future to bring that into play is great. We have a minute or two more left. I don't think we'll have time to get a ton of questions in, but I want to encourage any of our viewers to put them in the chat. I think we're going to work to get, maybe written responses if we can impose on our great panelists in the future. But I do, with a 3-hour event, want to make sure that we get everybody away for a little break. So we're going to maybe give it a minute or two to see if we get some questions in here. I know some of our panelists have to leave us momentarily. So once again, if you guys can all join me in thanking them for their expertise, their time, and their dedication. We appreciate you folks tremendously. So thank you. Use those reactions, folks. There's a horn, there's clapping, there's a heart. Those are great. So. It looks like I'm not seeing, I'll give it a minute more. It looks like I'm not seeing any major questions coming out. So I think we are going to send us to break here for about 10 minutes. We'll have the phenomenal Dr. Eiler coming in when we get back. So if we can see everybody back here at about 10:40. Thank you all for your time and participation.
It is my esteemed pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Robert Eiler. He is the Interim Associate Vice President of Government Relations and Professor of Economics at Sonoma State University, where he has been teaching since 1995. He earned a PhD from UC Davis in 1998 and a BA in Economics at CSU Chico in 1992. He serves on the Board of Directors for Redwood Credit Union, an $8 billion nonprofit financial cooperative. Robert has been a visiting scholar at both the University of Bologna and Stanford University. He is married and has one daughter and is a native of Sonoma County, California. And his family have been sheep and cattle ranchers, fun fact, in Marin and Sonoma County since 1910. Dr. Eiler has been a speaker at a couple of our different advisories. He's a highly sought speaker on economics, and he goes through a lot of data in a very clear way, but a rapid pace. So brace yourselves. We hope you had coffee at your break, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Eiler.
Thanks, Renee, and thanks, folks, for having me. I'm going to share my screen now. Let me just confirm that you can see it. Is everything cool and you can see that and you can hear me okay? Cool.
Everything looks good.
All right, great. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to move us through relatively quickly so we can get to some Q&A, the current state. So the new job numbers just came out for California this morning at 9 a.m. and I'm actually going to show you the latest data at the California level just to kind of give you the latest and greatest. But most of what I'm going to show you is actually through February because those are the latest data to allow us to really break down some of the retail, hospitality, and tourism stuff with respect to jobs. And we're going to see a real mixed bag emerging in terms of the forecast. So I'm going to provide you just a quick overview, talk relatively quickly at the national level, what's going on specific to hospitality, retail, and the tourism industries. And then we're going to talk about California a little bit more deeply, and then the Valley Vision region a little bit more deeply, with the idea that there are some themes emerging. The forecasts tell us a little bit different story here and there, but I'm going to try to give you some insights not only about where we're at, thinking about workforce development, and then ultimately thinking about the challenges and opportunities ahead for these industries. So this is the latest situation that we have. The new data for the US comes out in a couple of weeks, but through March, this is the evolution of the COVID-19 recession compared to the Great Recession. So I'm going to start both recessions on the same date, sort of, in the sense I'm going to start the COVID-19 recession January 2020, because economists are basically using the beginning of 2020 as a benchmark with respect to getting us back to square. And then the Great Recession, I'm going to start in November 2007. So you can see here on the screen, this blue line is starting at 100, the volume of jobs we had in November 2007. The bowl shape shows you this long, very slow recovery back to the original level of employment we had in the United States about 78 months later on a seasonally adjusted basis. So that was a relatively long recession, and this is why we call it the Great Recession. And it does include some recovery, but until we get back to that red dotted line, we are just recovering jobs that were lost. We're not growing. Here's the COVID-19 recession thus far at the national level through March. Now, the newest job numbers we have tell us that this number should kick up in the April data. We will see how far it kicks up, but we need that black line to go back up to the red dotted line, and I'll show you California as an analog in just a second. If you look at the industrial level, this is going to motivate a lot of what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes. This is the United States change in jobs in percentage terms from April 2020 with respect to April 2019. So for example, if you look at the far right-hand side, accommodation, hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, the sort of the array of the overnight stay industry, a 40%, a little bit more than 40% job cut April 2020 compared to April 2019. Now let's move ahead quickly. We see December, we see some recovery momentum across all these industries. So the way an economist describes the US economy, the next level from the sort of aggregate level down is this one. And you can see each one of these industries, except for information, which is kind of this weird amalgam of publishing, tech, and some other industries, saw some recovery momentum, especially in hospitality industries on the far right-hand side. Food services and drinking places is basically a fancy way of saying bars and restaurants. But then in January, February, and March, we saw a little bit of a wobble in terms of that recovery. And then March, we saw a little bit more recovery momentum. So at the US level, because there's been such a mixed bag of policies and movement out of the vaccine, differences with business and consumer confidence, we're seeing a little bit more recovery momentum than we're going to see in a little bit for California. But generally speaking, the national context is good. The forecast for the national economy with respect to income generation and jobs comes out of the one I follow, comes out of the Philadelphia Federal Reserve. Every quarter, they interview 40 economists who all those folks do is look at the US economy and the forecast every day of the week. And this is their median forecast. This first stop is the growth of income after inflation adjustments over the next few quarters. And in a second, I'll show you over the next few years, as it stood for them about 2 months ago. Now, a lot is changing. And so what's really tricky to be a macroeconomist right now is that I get asked a question on Monday and I answer it a certain way. Then something changes on Wednesday and I get asked the same question on Friday, I have to change it. Things have changed that quickly. It's been really wild the last 12 months in terms of trying to stay up on how to tell people a story about where the economy is going. But this is basically the story that we had a couple of months ago. Nothing's really changed that much except for the fact that in 2021, we're going to see a little bit of a pickup, and I'll talk about that in a second. The key is this, that shaded area is the latest forecast. The data to its left is last quarter's forecast. So you can see most of those numbers have picked up over the next few quarters. That's income growth after inflation, or what you really are gaining access to in your pocket with respect to income at home. The unemployment rate looks like this. You can see also the previous forecast, or the last quarter's forecast, is the column next door to it on the left. Better numbers across the board. Over the next few years, same deal. If you look at the previous forecast, just 3 months before this one, much lower numbers versus where we are today. I mean, look, even in 2023 is a full percentage point jump from the previous quarter's forecast. Why? We've had a lot of fiscal stimulus. We expect interest rates to remain relatively low. We have a lot of people unemployed, but that in essence, if we see this kind of recovery, we should see a lot of that unemployment fade relatively quickly in these forecasters' minds, and thus we have relatively robust unemployment rate forecasts. But there's two aspects of this that you got to think of as a caveat when you hear about these forecasts. How much of these forecasts depend on fiscal stimulus? So for example, in March, this forecast was redone and kicked up for 2021. You can see in that lower left-hand shaded column where it has 4.5 at the top, that has now been adjusted a month and a half later to 6.5%. because the totality of the fiscal stimulus that came out after the Biden administration came into office, which larger and,
this meeting ID
oh,
does not
and
accept.
seeing as more robust, that wasn't me, seeing as more robust than we expected. So that kicked up 2 full percentage points just for this year. So how much do these forecasts depend on fiscal stimulus, and how much do they depend on how that fiscal stimulus rolls out? It's something to think about. Well, the New York Federal Reserve does a survey of consumer expectations every month. And the latest one they did, they asked, hey, if you get federal stimulus money, what are you going to do with it? And they've done this each round of the 3 rounds of fiscal stimulus. And I keep mixing federal and fiscal. The idea is the federal government has provided some relief money, and we kind of call that stimulus money. So you can see here, and hopefully it's not too foggy. I had a hard time. I wanted to show this picture because I thought it just encapsulated everything in one shot. The first round of fiscal stimulus, the column that starts with number 1 at the top, a very even split between what was spent, what was saved, and what was used to pay down debt. Same in the second round, and the expectation is in the third round, this very similar mix, in fact, leaning more towards saving and debt buy down. Now, on the positive side, what's good about that is that people are saving and they're thinking, God, I'm getting this money. If I don't need to spend it, maybe I shouldn't. And if I've compiled some debt trying to bridge the gap between when I lost my job, stay in my home, and when I might get my job back, hey, I need to think about buying down some of that debt rather than just go out and say, great, I just got $1,200 in the mail. Let me put those 2 big screen TVs in the house I've been waiting to do, and poof, it's over. People seem to have thought about the Great Recession, which is not that far behind us in memory. And if this thing lingers, I might need that money, or I might need a little more room on my credit card to make things happen. The bad thing about that is the amount of stimulus in the rest of the economy we get from the federal stimulus is smaller as a result of that, but it gives us a longer path of growth later. So that balancing act is a classic question when the government starts spending money for macroeconomics. And I'll come back and talk about the inflation issue in just a little bit, just in thinking more in California. Okay, that's the national picture. Here's California right off the press this morning. Same story in terms of how we're going to look at the recovery in California like we looked at the national level. Here's the Great Recession in California. Instead of 78 months, it's about 69 months in California, a little faster because tech grew relatively quickly between the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2011 and really gave the California economy a boost after we fell so far in the Great Recession. But here's the COVID-19 recession. So that 93.2 number means that we're 93.2% back to the volume of workers we had in California at the beginning of 2020. We need that black line to go back up to the red dotted line, just like we have with the national economy, just to get back to pre-COVID employment levels. You can see how jagged that is. I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to run back up the ladder just real quick. 94.7% there at the national level, but notice how much more smooth this is. In that nationally, a lot of the different policies around the states kind of smoothed themselves out, meaning that we had a sharp cut across the board initially. Then we started to open back up slowly but surely. And as California kind of had an up and down movement over summer, fall, winter, the rest of the economy had a little bit smoother way, and some states did similar to California, some states did not. Now let's quickly go back down. I don't mean to make you feel weird as I'm going through this. Now we're back here. Notice that's kind of up and down. This basically following social policy. The supposition is that social policy is not going to become constrictive again. We should see more of a smooth movement over the next 12 months back up toward the red dotted line. But in California, there's a lot of back and forth about how long it's going to take to get there. And a lot of it, for better or for worse, is predicated upon forecasts that we're going to see or see some things about in a minute about these industries, retail, hospitality, and tourism. Will those jobs come back? And if they don't, will we have this loss of jobs that lingers for 12 or 18 more months? Okay, well, let's now look at an industrial level to motivate the rest of the time together today. Here's California in April 2020, and you can see that things were still okay kind of in April 2020, and then we really got hammered, and then we started to move a little faster, and this is December. Then January, February, and March of this year look like this. So if you look at the far right-hand side, this is a critical piece. The far right-hand side, leisure and hospitality, bars, restaurants, hotels, attractions, event centers, kind of the array of hospitality industries, 30% down from last March in terms of jobs. So 3 out of 10 people, sort of equivalent workers that had a job March 2020, out of work March 2021. That is a large cut. Other services are hair salons, nail salons, nonprofits not involving healthcare, but relatively big cut there too. With some maybe, head scratching, notice that retail is not that far down. Now, there's a couple of nuances in that. Retail includes jobs that are not necessarily in transportation and warehousing as part of the last mile delivery chain of the evolution of our lives online. They're actually warehousing jobs that are more on the front end of it, meaning that they are, in a sense, the receiver piece rather than, let's say, the movement piece, which is that positive aspect, that 5.7%. So retail may be getting some salvation from these workers who are classified as retail, but really look more like warehousing jobs at the end in terms of the evolution of businesses like Amazon. If you look at the local level, which we'll see in a minute, there's also somewhat of a mixed bag here, but some of this is because the restrictions locally were not as severe as in our urban areas, which are dragging a lot of these down. So for example, the Los Angeles area is one of the key reasons why we still have very high or very large losses in some of these categories. But this is the latest data right off the press this morning. Okay, so with all that as context, let's talk about these industries briefly with the idea of looking toward the future at the end of the day. Here's the evolution of jobs in retail since the year 2000. So if we set all these retail categories at 100 in the year 2000, one of the things economists have been trying to ask is that, are some of these categories already devolving in terms of the number of workers that they would have had otherwise because of trends changing, technology changing, and the way consumers look at their retail lives making shifts? 2000. 2010, generally growth across the board. Gas stations kind of sagged a little bit. Car dealers sagged a little bit too. Some of this changing a little bit. We know a lot of, let's say, broader department stores, furniture stores started to consolidate a little bit over that time. 2015, we saw a little bit more of a pickup, especially because we had recession happen in 2010 and then the comeback. So we had this sort of weird evolution going into the first 15 years of the new millennium. And then here's 2021. So you'll notice on the far left-hand side, well, let me start with this. In the middle is retail overall. So right in the average, right in the middle in terms of the evolution. But you can see that some of these industries already were kind of changing anyway. But if you look at the far left-hand side, that non-store retailer, that's Amazon. So that's where you've seen this weird big boost. And notice it really kicked after 2010. And if you think about memory, that's where Amazon came to really spread its wings across a lot of different retail categories, including the acquisition of Whole Foods, which put them in the grocery category. So you look there, the next two stalls are building materials. So Home Depot and Lowe's had a really nice early 2021 or 20 and 21, and then also our grocery stores did. So that's the evolving retail picture. Now, if you look, and there's the non-store retailers. If you look at what happened in retail, now we're going to look at the cuts specific to some of these. So while that gives you the evolution over the last 20-something years, now we're going to look more specifically at just what happened in COVID. So here's April 2019 and 20 compared to each other. And then here's what's happened basically February 2020 forward to 21. So looking all the way to February, where has recovery taken place, or where maybe there wasn't much pain at all? Same deal. Building materials, we saw a pickup. Food and beverage stores, meaning grocery stores, we saw a pickup. A little bit on the non-store retailer side. So even then, we saw a big boost, but that was already sort of climbing up the ladder, and there hasn't been an enormous amount added since. A lot of it's been more on the logistics side, but then cuts across the board otherwise. If you look at the far right-hand side, one of the things to think about is, will that 18.6% loss of jobs, meaning basically 19 out of 100 people, will those jobs ever come back in clothing stores? Or will we see more consolidation, less brick and mortar, and in a sense, structural change? In hospitality, same deal, starting in year 2000, 2010, 2015, 2021. But let's go back to 2015. Notice almost across the board increases, more or less, with a little bit on the performing arts side sagging a little bit. But if you think about the reason why people travel, what they do while they're traveling, these are categorically the array that economists use to think about what are the buckets we want to watch to see if there's changing trends or structural change in these industries. And then again, here's 2021. So that 149 means that you're 49.1% more jobs than you were in the year 2000. Check this out. Go all the way to the other side, the right-hand side, bars and restaurants. As of January 2021, bars and restaurants were 31% of the year 2000 level of employees. So when you close bars, restaurants, that volume, there's a lot of people out of work, and there's a big contraction of the number of people in that industry. Where do those people go? Do we see full rehiring of those people? I'll come back in a second and talk about that. Same deal in terms of the cut during COVID. This is April, the beginning of the problem, across the board problem. So not like retail, where there was a little bit of light here and there because we were shifting our lives to different types of retail. Everybody got hammered, and that hammering remains. Far right-hand side, specific style of entertainment, hospitality, whether the amusement park thing is likely to continue to be a little weird because we just don't know how people are going to come back to amusement parks. We will see, but those are severe chops in terms of jobs. So if you think about this in contrast to retail, there's a lot of people here that really depend on the travel season for jobs and really the stability of that sort of continuous movement of people around the state and from the world to come to California. What's next? Well, now let's look at the Valley Vision of some examples around the region a little bit. So here's non-farm data in April 2020, looking back 1 year for California, same thing we saw before, Chico, Redding, Sac, and Yuba and Sutter, just to give you an example of some of what's changed around the region. And then here it is as of February, looking back 1 year. So we see those cuts. Redding has done actually relatively well in terms of jobs over the COVID-19 recession time. Sutter County and Yuba County have not done as well, but generally speaking, we have seen recovery. It just has not been, let's say, robust yet. But this is for all non-farm jobs. Okay, now keep a mental picture of that, because now we're going to talk about retail, and retail's got kind of a funny story. Initially, April 2020, looking back when the pain really started to begin, everybody got cut. But in Redding, for example, we've actually seen a positive change in retail jobs. Now you might say, why is that possible? It's possible because the more rural parts of California have actually seen less hurt in retail because they stayed open and they weren't maybe as dependent on visitors to supplement that retail. Where a place like Chico, for example, between the university and the flow of visitors into Chico, different ballgame in terms of rehiring and being able to, in a sense, keep retail at the demand level enough to keep stores open. Sacramento's come back because Sacramento right now is really on a good tear in terms of recovery. And even Yuba and Sutter counties have actually come back somewhat. But the point is like we saw before, retail had some glimmers of light. Here's the hospitality piece more completely with respect to tourism. Big cuts, and those cuts remain relatively robust, unfortunately, across the board. So one of the things we need to think about regionally is when the tourism season begins again, will there be a capacity to come back? Well, to think about the challenges that specifically the hospitality industry faces, McKinsey just put a report out to look at, okay, let's look globally at where we think jobs are going to go. The more blue colors here are where job growth is expected internationally. In the United States is column 1. The darker colors at the bottom are where we expect job losses or cuts away from where we started 2020. Customer service and sales, an amalgam of hospitality and retail jobs, and then restaurants, food services, down toward the bottom. A lot of economists are out there talking about structural change in these industries. And so there are some challenges. Will there be retail jobs that come back if brick and mortar starts to fail? Meaning that if you start hearing about large employers in brick and mortar, is that going to change the game? Will restaurant workers come back to the old capacity, or will be this weird hybrid capacity where you're not going to have to hire as many wait staff because I don't have as many people sitting down as I did before, and I'm now in a takeout and sit down model? Will drivers be demanded at the same level? So the weird thing about restaurants reopening is, will people that were doing delivery lose a job because now we're going back to sitting down? And how much is that going to shake up that sort of niche industry that evolved in 2020? Will travel increasing have this weird intrastate split, meaning that you might see actually jobs recover in hospitality and retail quicker in more rural, or let's say small suburban areas, than in urban areas, because people are more willing to travel to the mountains, to the lakes, than to come into the cities because they're concerned about variants and resurgence. And then will business travel return? This is one of the biggest questions about our urban areas, including Sacramento. Even though Sacramento has this sort of political engine that's always boiling, how much of that's going to be Zoom in engaging with our elected officials and their staff? Or is it going to be this sort of consistent intra-week movement because of meetings and working with the political machinations in Sacramento? Something that came up, and I added this actually as somebody was talking earlier, is thinking about burnout. So one of the things we're also concerned about as far as a challenge is, hey, will we have entrepreneurship? Because I don't see a good future here. And why would I want to start a business in an environment that actually is contracting? Especially if I had a business before, I lost it, and now I want to restart it again. Watch for that in terms of the capacity in retail and hospitality jobs. At the end of the day, there may just not be a lot of new local businesses that want to start. But if we look forward, I wanted to end on an opportunity note. There's a lot of retraining and retooling opportunities here, including inside of retail and hospitality. So we got to think, can we retrain folks that used to be in retail jobs for other growing industries like construction? So construction's got a really good forecast behind it. We will see. I don't know how many people who are, let's say, 65 who used to be a checker are suddenly going to want to go out and move plywood. That seems somewhat non-starter to me. But there's certainly going to be opportunities for younger folks who may not see their retail job coming back, but as we want to build more homes, which is, we're going to see some heat around that over the next 12 or 18 months in Sacramento and in Washington, that might help. Will we see warehousing jobs continue to grow and potentially last mile delivery grow, which could be a relatively easy shift for folks that were in retail previously? And what are we going to do with our older workers in terms of retooling them, especially if they were using these relatively easy entry jobs as a way of supplementing or potentially generating their prime income? So that's something that it's a challenge, but there's also an opportunity if we can maybe think about how to transition some of our older workers into a new maybe career during the senior years of their time working. But if we look out toward 2030, when you think about those opportunities, think about there's also some other pressures. Automation in hospitality. Will a front desk clerk, for example, in a hotel be replaced by a kiosk because it's easier? There's no issue with being late, with being sick. It just tells everybody what they want to know by the touch of a pad, and everybody's relatively trained on that. So watch for automation in hospitality, to a certain extent in restaurants, but that depends on the style of restaurant. And ultimately, are we going to see brick and mortar retail become more and more visitor focused? So when you travel someplace, you generally don't go on your phone and say, hey, Amazon, deliver my shoes to this hotel. You wait till you come home. So when you're shopping locally and you're visiting, that supports local brick and mortar. How much more dependent are local brick and mortar retailers going to become on visitors? That's another big question going forward in terms of the evolution of jobs in this industry, but it also delivers a potential opportunity in terms of entrepreneurism in a place that might see more and more travel because of a reticence to fly around the world over the next few years. So with that, folks, that's basically the outlook. Things are not great. The summer 2021 is probably going to tell a lot of the tale, but the forecasts are picking up across the board and people want to spend and get out. It's really in restaurants and retail where I think most of the action is going to happen summer 2021. travel will be 22 and 23 before we really see the final evolution of how we're going to travel, specifically on the business side and potentially on the international side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eiler.
Sure, I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you. We have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has specific questions for Dr. Eiler, you can either put them in the chat or you can use the raise your hand feature. A lot of great information. Thank you for giving us the latest data too that just came out. And so thank you.
And these slides will be available to everyone in post-meeting materials email.
So if there's no questions, Renee, I was going to say one more thing.
You bet.
The travel forecast, so like the forecast I showed you before, the forecast comes out on January 30. 6 weeks later, there's this almost 50% boost to the 2021 forecast in terms of the magnitude of change. The travel forecasts are kind of going through the same evolution. Most travel economists, folks that look at the travel industry all the time, saw 2024 as the sort of volume level return to pre-COVID spending by travelers in the United States, and 2025 for international travelers to the United States. All those have now moved up 1 year because of fiscal stimulus, because of the vaccines, because of how the vaccines are being adopted and how it looks like the other parts of our economy are evolving. So the travel forecast is getting better, which provides some hope. The issue is just going to be, how is rehiring going to take place and how many people are left behind after that cycle of rehiring takes place that we have to try to figure out what to do with from a workforce development standpoint. That to me is the biggest challenge, but it's also an amazing opportunity to develop a new style of workforce for California as a result of that, including the Valley Vision region.
Perfect.
No
Thank
questions,
you.
folks? For real?
Aside from the numbers that you shared about the growth with construction, that's going to be boosting and coming back up, and probably the retail space for our 65 and older age group. What other industries or what other I guess sectors do you feel like are going to be in a phase of strong growth?
Yeah, two that might be are manufacturing and healthcare. Manufacturing, because we're hearing a lot of presidential level and gubernatorial level, and what day of the week it depends, heat around trying to provide incentives for new manufacturing firms to spring up in the United States, specifically in food and beverage. So one subsector of that in food and beverage, California might do very, very well. And a lot of it might be because of the evolution of last mile delivery means I can entrepreneurially start a business. I have a localized market for that. There's now a full infrastructure to do last mile through third parties. And the cost of that should stabilize to a certain extent over the next couple of years as we sort of, go back to doing normal routines and not put all of our lives online. That could lead to some really decent growth in specific areas. And we will see if that really catches on or we kind of go back to a pre-COVID mode. On the healthcare side, we might see more telehealth and teletherapy positions spring up, but there's a lot of training that goes into that. On the manufacturing side, the training cycle is about 4 months on average for a lot of the food and beverage piece, and it kind of depends on how complex the food and beverage may be. In healthcare, in some cases, it's a minimum of 9 months to 2 years. I'm sorry. So that the path for someone to make that career change choice is a little longer, but those are two subsectors that you might see a little bit more action in. After that, it gets a little bit more dicey in terms of seeing forward because you're not really hearing a lot more. The construction side also kind of depends on any infrastructure bill that comes out of the federal government, because you might see some heavy construction dollars increase the number of workers demanded, which will leave some of those workers behind with respect to other construction that wants to take place, and thus there'll be labor demand that might help out. So the infrastructure piece has a lot of positive aspects, not only in our roads and bridges and highways, but also local construction opportunities for people to make a shift.
Thank you. I think we have one more question that was presented. Dr. Summers, do you want to pose that, or do you want me to read that from the chat? We'll prefer. Let's see if she wants to unmute. It looks like the question is, to answer questions you raised about whether occupations or travel will return, what sort of data over what period of time would you be looking for?
Yeah, there's two pieces of data. One you can follow with about a 1/4 lag, which is taxable sales in California across all 58 counties. So the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, right? I think it's tax and fee and not fee and tax. Anyway, if you just Google taxable sales in California, you'll get to the page. If you follow that, that can tell you where the demand side is sort of increasing finally. And then that should lead to more hiring. So there might not be a lot of hiring initially because a lot of retailers, bars and restaurants are going to probably slowly rehire as demand slowly kicks up. And that's why 2021 might be a year where there's sort of midland growth in hospitality. And then if everything really starts to catch back on and people go back to their pre-COVID lives to a large extent, 2022 is where you might really see some job jumps there. So that the taxable sales piece, especially in bars and restaurants, or what'll be in those data called food services or food and beverage stores. No, let's take it back, food services. And then the other ones are the other parts of retail. Like I showed you that graph where food and beverage stores or grocery stores and building material stores had actually pretty decent growth. The other ones had problems. If you look in those sectors, if you're not seeing much growth in taxable sales in those sectors, it's because nobody's really going back to brick and mortar in those sectors. They're all going into that so-called other retail group that is Amazon, because Amazon's got an array of stuff. So you might be buying sandals on Amazon alongside of a book, alongside of golf balls, alongside of milk at Whole Foods. And so they're all squished together in this one group, but those taxable sales have been surging. So if they continue to surge and those other groups like clothing stores continue to sag or lag a little bit, you're not going to see much rehiring there. So those taxable sales data are really the place I go to kind of get a forward look, because the sales should happen and then the hiring should happen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to hand it back to Josh. He's going to introduce our breakout sessions, which will be coming up next.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Dr. Eiler. Informative as always. Just like Mike from Visit Sacramento, if you don't get a lot of questions, it means you were comprehensive and thorough. So, but you certainly got some questions. Thanks again, Robert. So I think we have, yep, Jesse's got us coming up there. So I just want to run through the questions that we have here for the breakouts. We're going to jump into 3 breakout groups. We will have an exercise as part of it that Caitlin's going to introduce shortly, but just to briefly go over the questions, get them top of mind before we head out. These are our questions based on the information shared today. What changes, additions, updates should be the top priorities for us on the educational side, specifically in culinary, hospitality, and retail programs? What are some specific steps that RHT employers in California might be able to take to incentivize and promote entry into and upskilling in their industry sectors? And what other suggestions or feedbacks do we all see as important to provide to K-12, adult education, and community college RHT programs in the greater Sacramento region? So hopefully those are on point and productive for the future. And I think Caitlin's going to run us through a really cool program called Mentimeter.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, so we will be using Mentimeter today. This is a new software, but I think is really great in some of these breakout rooms to facilitate some of this conversation. So we'll walk you through this in the breakout room, but I just wanted to touch on it while we're all here together. Once we pop into our breakout rooms, we will go ahead and provide this link to you in the chat, but that link will essentially be for www.menti.com. We'll share a screen and you'll be able to see a code, sort of like you can see in this screenshot example here. You'll just go to that website, put in that code, and it will pull up those questions that Josh just read off to you. I often recommend, you can join this menti.com on your computer or on your cell phone. I often recommend cell phones because I think it's nice to sort of put it in on your phone while you're looking at your screen, but either way, it's just a great way. It'll generate a word cloud with everyone's answers and really helps to facilitate some of that discussion. So we will pop into our breakout rooms just shortly here. But that's essentially, the guide to Mentimeter, and we'll have one of our staff members or Josh will be in the breakout rooms with you to help walk you through as well. So I think
together versus saying like, this is what I have for you and just take it, right? So hopefully that brings that spirit of like, hey, let's take this offline, let's get together and let's talk about like how the micro credentials that came up for me. Some of the work I do outside of the work with youth and young adults is in education is in mental health. So we're thinking about like people who were past like former incarcerated. They're actually some of the best folks to mentor and coach others through the process. But once you've been in that position, it's hard to get any certification. So what we're thinking about over at Berkeley City College and in parts of San Francisco is providing certificates and micro-credentials that are actually acknowledged by the healthcare industry in health and human services, saying like, hey, this person that does have a background, they have the knowledge, they know how to apply it, they should be a practitioner of it, versus having to go, you know, someone who's been incarcerated, getting them all the way to master's or PhD level. That's one of the hardest mountains to ever climb. So why don't we have our peers and our local folks be able to be practitioners and share the practices? So if it's talking about hospitality, if we had micro-credentials there, you wouldn't have to go all the way to get a master's to say like, I know how to explain change management. I know how to be a practitioner of it, but then take that and give it to the folks who are implementing it and then practicing it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has thoughts that they want to share about this question?
I didn't put it in there, but the way you were describing what you were just talking about makes me just think of accessibility, right? It's the root of equity is to make this all more accessible to folks, whether it's financial or, you know, just the time, making it flexible for them. So I love that idea when you put that in the chat. I immediately DM'd you. So I appreciate, you guys are thinking about that, and anything that we can all do to band together to make these things happen, you know, and execute on them. It's a great place to start.
It was interesting what I think it was Tim Stallings said about the gap in employment and what that was going to create from a skills loss. And could there be a short-term training to that they would be, Sacramento Republic would be looking to some sort of training to short-term training to fill that gap. I thought that was interesting as well. And I'm curious about if online offerings will continue to reach an expanded audience. Even if people are looking to change careers, getting access to building those credentials before they make the change into hospitality. So maybe they start at a wage that's higher than the very entry level.
I don't think online is going to ever go away at this point. I mean, I know online is, you know, online education and option has been around for a long time, especially when you talk about the college level, but especially like for K-12, I mean, that's always been kind of a charter school option and certainly wasn't part of public school education. I don't think that's ever going to go away at this point. I think that's going to be a part of a public school from now on. So I think the opportunities for students from high school on to get kind of that extra training in other ways it's beyond expandable, right? So the opportunities now that they're going to have to get those extra trainings at different times, because now they don't have to travel maybe to the community college. They can go home and then get that extra class or that extra training at the same time. So I don't think those options are ever going to go away. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I think it was Bonnie, is it Bonnie? It's not
Bobbin.
Bobbin, sorry, Mulvaney, who said teaching resiliency instead of coping. That really stuck with me. You know, and we always talk about trying to teach students, you know, to critical thinking and all the, and coping and being flexible. But the way she put that, and she said, you know, teaching them how to be resilient and teaching them how to cope are two very different things. So I really appreciated that example that she put out.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. If there are no other particular comments, I'm going to move to the next question. Okay, here we go. This is the next question, and it's actually going to pop up in more of a list format. What are some steps that retail, hospitality, and tourism employers in California can take to incentivize and promote entry into and upskilling in their industry sectors. And I think this kind of gets to, there's a whole movement to quality jobs, which people define differently. But higher wage, benefited positions that are more create self-sufficiency for the family. So retail, hospitality, and tourism isn't always known for those positions. So what are ways that we can work together to make that happen? You can just type in whatever thoughts you have, and they'll start showing up in a list. Again, there'll be anonymity, so they're not tagged to you. Sometimes that's helpful to put something out there that's not completely, baked idea. Sometimes I have a half-baked idea and I want to put it out there, but I don't want it to be associated with me in case I haven't thought completely through it. So internships, externships, apprenticeships, recruiting at the schools, I'm guessing maybe high schools, person-centered plan, oh, that's neat, support system coaching, pipelines, make the career ladders clear, that's for sure, that kind of came up by one of the speakers. Support enrollment in training programs and community college, flexible schedules, mentorship. Yep. Those are some great ideas. Does anybody want to talk specifically to something they may have put in or something on here that really speaks to them?
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but there was one that I'm just curious to know more about the person's thoughts. So you can always write your answer to me directly, but with whoever wrote around support enrollment in training programs, in terms of what that cross collaboration could look like with organizations that one might potentially work for. Is that considering like some sort of like scholarship type of program that would be in partnership with that potential employer? I'm assuming that's what that meant, but that sounds like a cool idea.
Well, I didn't say it, but I will put forward that. So my daughter works for Cornell University, so the certificate programs from Cornell University, and they have a lot of employer partners. It's been fascinating to me. It's a relatively new job for her, but to kind of watch, who she's interacting with and how she's interacting. And there's a lot of employer-sponsored programs that will pick specific, very short-term certificated tracks that they will sponsor for their employees. And just from an overall workforce development perspective, I think we have gotten so far away from employer-sponsored training. I mean, it used to be the thing, I'm sorry, I'm old, like 80s, 90s, we did employer-sponsored training, and then it just completely went away. So I think, with the change management that's required and the automation and just the acceleration of change, if employers want to keep and make sure that their employees are prepared for how their industry is changing, employer-sponsored short-term certificated micro-credentials, I'll give it back to you on that. I think that's a great way to, I'm seeing some movement in that. Anyone else have thoughts on that or anything else that really speaks to you on this list? We're doing a little bit of work with Cosumnes River College. Valley Vision is on a culinary arts management kind of curriculum redesign and work that they're doing. And in that, we've done some research with other community colleges and how they develop their programs. And that internship piece is built in it's very integrated. It's more integrated in some programs than others for especially for hospitality, that internship integration, so that when people graduate, they can achieve a higher paying career rather than just the entry level career, because they've gotten that year out of the way or something like that, so that I'll just put that out there. You all probably know more about that than I do, but it's been interesting in the research. Linda, can you turn your volume up? It looks like you're not muted, but for some reason it's hard to hear you. Still not hearing you, but you don't look muted. Do you have headphones that you can plug in? Try that.
Do you have headphones plugged in? If your headphones are in, that might be why we can't hear you. No.
Do you need to go get them? We'll be here. Okay.
You know, I think one of the things that you were saying, that there used to be more like employee training. I think a lot of that kind of went away more with the attitude of loyalty to your employees, also for a lot of companies, right? Because a lot of companies after in the 80s, 90s, going into 2000s, I mean, employer loyalty was kind of a thing of the past, right? All of a sudden it was kind of everybody for themselves, and no one expects to stay with a company for, 10, 15, 20 years anymore. So companies aren't putting in that kind of training into their employees. And for a while there, it was just kind of like come and go, right? Employees are leaving, you just hire again, so they weren't really looking into putting money into developing their employees that way, or helping them change paths within that industry, right? So, but I'm hoping that's something that's going to change, and that they're starting to see the value in keeping your employees, and maybe if they're on one path and going towards something in their industry that maybe is not working for them, they're still committed to helping them move to something else and staying in their company or organization, right? That maybe, and putting in that training to that employee, keeping that person and having that joint loyalty, right? So now that, and think about that. I mean, how much money do they save probably doing that? If you can put an employee on another track and keep them in your organization versus they leave, they go work for somebody else. Now you have to hire somebody else. Now you still have to put in some type of training to this new person again, and then build that all over again. I mean, wouldn't you stay with your company if they offered to put you on another track instead of, you having to leave and go find someplace else and start all over again? I mean, that just builds so much loyalty on both ends. I can't imagine that doesn't save them money.
Thank you. Those are great comments. Linda, do you want to try your sound? Okay, try to unmute. Oh, we're still not hearing you, unfortunately. Can you type it in the chat? Okay, if you type it in the chat, then we'll get your comments that way. I'm going to go ahead and advance. We have one more question, and let me get that up for us, and then we'll read Linda's when they come in. So this is the last question here. I want that to go away. Hopefully you still have your code because it's blocking it for some reason. What other suggestions or feedback would you provide to K-12 adult education and community college, retail, hospitality, and training programs in the greater Sacramento region? So basically anything else that you want to share that hasn't been spoken that you think would be beneficial or useful for retail, hospitality, and tourism occupations. Oh, Microsoft just did an update which may have affected audio. Thank you. Capacity building and not being afraid of succession planning. Okay. Person-centered planning approaches from a wraparound services perspective. It's strength-based and focuses on what the end user client would like in their personal growth plans. Okay, thank you. Like individualized coaching. We're having a couple of different sound problems. Partnering with schools programs to upskill folks. CBTs just don't cut it. What is a CBT? Can I ask?
computer-based trainings.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most companies our size lean on that because it's a way to scale the training across 10,000 plus folks, but they're just not really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, any other thoughts or suggestions that you want to type into the Mentimeter using the same code? We'll be capturing this information for the notes for the community college system. Well, and also I'm just curious if we've shared some of our insights. Was there anything else that particularly stuck out to anybody from the advisory so far? Anything a panelist said or guest speaker? It just helps us know what's really resonating with folks.
I was looking at Linda put something in the chat.
Thank you.
She said, let's see, just thinking of those wanting to change careers or opportunities in the industry, knowing where to go for help or assistance, or having a manager truly observe the person and refer to a position better fitting to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks to that individualized coaching. Is that correct? Kind of going back to that individualized person-centered coaching. Career readiness in all curriculum. Yes, we certainly heard a lot about soft skills or interpersonal skills, social emotional skills. And actually Valley Vision just did a research project with Burning Glass Technologies about what employers were looking for and how it had shifted in the marketplace. And the top skills requested were social, emotional, and interpersonal skills. Communication was top. Communication skills. Which you would think we were looking for all these digital skills to pop up, and there were some there, but it's really about the 21st century skills and the ability to adapt and change. Any additional thoughts? I don't know if Wilda, Doug, or Linda, Cal, if any of you want to contribute either in the chat or verbally. I think in 1 minute we may get sucked back into the main room, so I just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to share who might want to.
So we are actually starting our or expanding our retail and hospitality pathway at my high school. That's where I coach. Right now we have more of a fitness recreation pathway. And so we're looking to expand tourism, hospitality. And so kind of just coming here to see ideas and how to more efficiently integrate to find out what the business side is looking for and kind of making our program fit so that when they graduate here that they can easily transition into that facility or into that job. So that's kind of what I'm looking to gain through this. So that's why I'm here.
That's great. Thank you. Which high school are you with? I'm just curious.
The acronym is SAVA. It stands for Sacramento Academic and Vocational Academy. So we have multiple campuses, Midtown, South Sac, Elk Grove. So we're huge into vocationals. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Career exploration in all curriculum, seeing that also. It looks like all breakout rooms are going to close in 55 seconds. I appreciate your conversation today, your attendance, and for participating in Mentimeter. I don't think I broke anything, so I'm really excited about that. You can graduate to intermediate Mentimeter skills after this event. Thank you for being my guinea pigs. We'll go back to the main room and have a little bit of share out. We didn't designate somebody to share out if anyone's particularly interested, or I can just start and ask for contributions from the group. Up to you. Okay, I will start, and then if anyone wants to contribute, that's what we'll do. All right, 17 seconds. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Alrighty, can everybody see my Mentimeter screen up at the top here? Awesome. Alrighty. And I think feel free, I think we might have a small enough group that folks might be able to unmute themselves. So would encourage everyone, I'm going to go ahead in the chat here and put in, you'll see it, I'm sharing screen here, you'll see that www.menti.com and that code here, which is 13506200. If everyone could just go on that website and input the code, fairly simple there, and it will bring you right up into that screen you see here. I'll give everyone a moment to do that. And once you go ahead and get on the website, you can start answering. I think it's kind of fun as people answer, you can see the results in live time. So would encourage everyone to go there. I'll give everyone a minute or two. I know people are popping into the breakout rooms, and Mentimeter is new for some folks, but I find it pretty straightforward. I'll give everyone a minute here. All right, I think folks are getting set up on Mentimeter. But yeah, looking forward to hearing, what changes, additions, updates you think should be top priorities for educators to consider while in the culinary, hospitality, or retail programs. Alrighty, anybody having trouble with Mentimeter? Are we getting logged in there? Alrighty, I know some folks have their video off. I'm not sure if folks are listening in. Alice, were you able to get into Mentimeter there? Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. I see that you're unmuted. I don't know why my sound is not working. Actually, let me try one thing. I think I'm having, give me one moment. I think I'm having small technical issues. Let's see here.
Please enter the code.
There we go. Okay, let me go ahead and reshare my screen. Sorry about that. I'm working with two monitors and one of them is acting up on me today. As I know, I'm sure we're all familiar with in the Zoom world. Alrighty, there we go. I think I should be able to hear everyone now. Sorry about that. Is everyone able to get onto Mentimeter? I think I see folks working on it right now. No worries.
So can I ask a question, Caitlin?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm on this and it has the question. I've never used this before, so.
No worries.
So it's got lots of boxes where it says enter another word. So are you supposed to put one answer for each box, or it's just making a paragraph, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so I think like this question, I think allows you to input one or two words. The next two questions I think are more about like a long answer format. I think this one is just for a short answer. So I think it will allow you to put in one or two words, and you can click like that submit button at the bottom there.
Okay.
No worries. We actually just learned about this program at Valley Vision, but we used it for one of our past events. And I think it's great in the big breakout room. I think it's sometimes nice to have like a visual aid or see what other folks are inputting. So excited to get this launched. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I see someone just input soft skills. Perfect. So I think as people, put in some of those entries, they should pop up on the screen automatically here. Awesome. Mental health.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting for me to hear some of our discussion on soft skills earlier. I feel like that's something I was exposed to in college or had in my educational experience, but it's interesting, especially for young people today, making sure that they have some of those experiences. Great to see people using Mentimeter. Yeah, I see management training, managing ambiguity, soft skills, flexibility. Yeah, awesome. Anyone want to add on to that? I know we had a pretty thorough discussion earlier, but I love to hear folks' opinions. Yeah, I love seeing everyone using Mentimeter. Yeah, flexibility. Can someone refresh my memory for EQ? I don't know if I know that acronym. Anyone?
I think Alice is trying to say something, but we can't hear it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we can't hear Alice. Maybe if you put in the chat.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, adaptability. You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of times we think about, you know, specific like hard skills or classes or things like that. So it was interesting for me to learn about soft skills. Yeah, Alice, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I know we talked about that earlier. I liked, Bob, in your example with the flower. And so I think a lot of people need to have that experience of, you know, learning by doing. Yeah, anyone want to add on to that or touch on something here? Oh, I see emotional intelligence is EQ. Thank you.
Hmm.
What are you thinking, Bobbin?
I'm thinking I'm dyslexic and a person like me just looks at it and moves past it. So I love that you're curious enough to ask.
I'm new to Valley Vision. This is my first month here, but we use a lot of acronyms. So I've been like, so what is that again? You know, I'm not great with the acronyms, so I think.
Oh no, I can make those up, man, really quick. Not good at acronyms at all. Yes, IQ.
And Angela, I see you said innovation and sanitation. Can you talk a little more about that?
Just thinking of COVID and all the challenges restaurants have been facing, just trying to keep things even more innovative, teaching our students how to think innovative for really maximizing sanitation and safety in this world where everything is just so unpredictable.
Yeah, and I think too, like I completely agree with you, just sanitation in general, but also I think it's hard, especially during COVID, because there's also like the public perception of sanitation. You know, it's not just about actually, you know, I know restaurants are up to codes and up to standards, but it's also like presenting that to customers, you know, which is, it's just even hard. It has to go like to another step, another level.
You know, something that I've tried to kind of, in a small way, brainwash is that I think that we are used to hide all of our sanitation stuff under the counter, behind the hostess stand. And since all of this has started, like, I want to see your spray bottles. I want to see your rags.
Right.
And something I love to see is people sweeping. And because I still use a pencil, I go to it naturally. I know you have to look busy, and people, honest to God, I don't think people are being taught how to sweep a kitchen floor because someone else comes and does it at night.
Right.
Well, you could just clean your station a minimum of 3 times. When you come in, sometime in the middle of it, and when you leave. And those kind of, I like to see you sweeping. You know where I am? If I'm really bored at work, I'm out sweeping the sidewalk because I get to see my neighbors. I see my clients come in. I see my staff come in. So I think that is so important. And I, was blessed to be at a mindful retreat last week, which Hyatt has bought a hotel. And I have to say, my first response in the dining room was, oh, someone left those rags out. Mm-hmm. Well, no, they put them in a nice little container and a spray bottle next to it in the dining room at a Hyatt. I was like, oh, they're doing what I've been asking my staff to do, educate the public that it's cool. I like seeing you clean that table.
Right.
We don't even, the way that we've put a tablecloth on, right? You've got to pull one out while one is going on. And if it takes more than a couple people, if it's a long table, it's like this magic trick. No, man, I really would like to see someone clean the tables even under the tablecloth.
Right. I completely agree with that. That's like, I actually worked at Raley's when I was in high school, and we, often clean down that sort of assembly line you put your groceries on, that, we'd sort of wipe those down even between customers. And sometimes, you know, maybe they were probably fine. They were probably cleaned an hour before, but you never know. It's always good to err on the side of caution, you know? Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I like someone put real world situations. I think that's important. I think especially as we were talking about earlier, you know, there's things like that you don't learn until you're working the job, until you're in it, and that's where experience comes in. Anyone who put real world situations wanna speak to that too?
Sure, that was me.
Nice.
So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to start a leadership program in our chamber for students. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them out into our community and into those businesses. And right now we're going to have a community expo in October, and we're pairing students with businesses, and we're asking them to get together so that the student can tell the story of the business. So they need to go there and learn what happens in this business and why is it important to the community, and what things are happening with them, what struggles they might have. And then they're going to have to go on the day of the expo, they're going to work together to create a story in the booth, and then the student is going to give the pitch. So there will be a pitch contest and they'll have to do that. But this gets them into a business where we found that the businesses have a hard time with students and the interns a little bit, because while it's great that you get that extra help, you don't always have time to one-on-one with them. You know, it's a busy, fast-paced thing, right? So in this way, they maybe can learn how to communicate with the student better. The student can learn not to be quite as shy and to be able to express their needs or questions or whatever that is. And it could create opportunities, we're hoping, for further internships and actually employment down the line. But they get to experience different businesses that maybe they wouldn't have thought of before, and we're actually putting them on the doorstep. And this is the excuse me, the first step of our leadership program. After this, we'd like to have a day where they go out and actually see the backside, and maybe there's a speaker from that business that talks to them. So we're kind of forming it as we go and tailoring it to our specific community. But real world situations, I think, is something that my businesses have come to me and said, you know, they don't know how to deal here yet. They're not here yet.
Well, it sounds so excellent too, because especially in college programs, you know, I can write a paper, I can do a PowerPoint, you know, but doing that actual real world work is a totally different thing. And I see Alice in the comments asking Sue which chamber you belong to.
So I'm with the Winters District Chamber of Commerce.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. I also saw someone put in Mentimeter mental health. I'd be curious to hear more of your perspective on that.
Well, mine was mental health, but to Sue, I love what you're doing. That is the coolest ever. I have the opportunity to teach. For years, I did it with high school Cristo Rey, but then most of the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing it with NELP, which is a young leadership program. I teach etiquette class, and I am really strict. And I think that they're surprised because I say, I am not your teacher and I'm not your parent. I teach etiquette. So here, do not be insulted if I touch your arm or if I call you out on something. And I think it's so important because if someone shows up to a leadership meeting in their pajamas, I think they need to get called out. And if they go on the bus that way, I'm amazed that the bus driver, that the teacher, that the chaperone did. And one teacher said, what would you do with them? I said, they would be sitting in the hallway with their, in front of the vice principal's office on their butt. I would not put them on a bus to a leadership class in pajamas or girls' ripped jeans. And I know that it embarrasses them, quite frankly, but I think that there's a point where somebody's got to say it. You know, they've got, they're not too cool for school when they come into that. I've taken my time, my morning or my afternoon. I'm hosting you lunch. You have the respect to get dressed. Don't wear your pajamas to the bank. You know, respect the money, where it comes from and how you made it. You got to get up and get dressed.
I have to say, I actually had a full-grown woman that I had hired at one point come to her first day of work in her pajamas.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
actually
cool.
had to send a grown person home and say, you need to get into work clothes, you know, so it's kind of shocking, right? I suppose it was to me.
Yeah, oh, it is to me every time.
Well, that's where
Love that.
teaching this real world experience, like you mentioned, is key here. And we have a couple more questions. Our next question here is, you know, what are some steps that RHT employers in California can take to incentivize or promote entry into and upskilling in these industry sectors? Would love to hear folks answer. I think on Mentimeter, it should just move you along to the next question on your screen here. And I did mention this earlier, but I think we are selecting one person to share out from our group. Have any volunteers when we go back into the main group of someone to share out sort of what we discussed? People are shy, no takers? I don't know, Sue, I see you smiling there. I think you might be the person to report out.
Am I getting called out here?
That'd be great.
I used to be an organizer in a congressional campaign that we ran over Zoom. So my job was being like, hey, it's like pulling people to speak up. So, but I think they'll be great.
Let me see how far we get in the questions, right?
Okay. All right. Everyone doing okay with Mentimeter? I know some folks are, I think this is a longer answer one, so feel free to take your time in putting some of that, but I just want to make sure everyone got moved on to the second question, okay.
Oh, I don't know if I'm reading it correctly, but I would say the biggest incentive that I have for people is leaving room for them to have a family life. So, you know, especially in our industry, people can be so rough. You know, a couple of years ago, we had 2 line chefs, which is a huge, hot and heavy job. They're your workhorses, and 2 of them had a baby within 10 days of each other. And their chef was being tough on them. And I'm like, you have no idea. Those guys have not slept in weeks. You know, can we rotate other people in to give these guys a little bit more of a break and really encourage them to take their family leave? You know, we always do that. And of course, we lived through a lot of deaths, you know, over our 15 years with this business. And we really want to make sure that people don't make us their priority. And we try to make sure that they understand that right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. And, you know, building a work environment where a person feels like a person who's, you know, cared about, as opposed to, you know, like someone whose sole life is their work. Exactly. And I see someone also put, you know, outreach to communities such as Native American organizations and high schools. Yeah, rotate evening and weekend hours for greater work-life balance, similar to what you said, Bob. And yeah, I think that work-life balance is really key to keeping people happy and having them enjoy the job. I'd love to hear folks speak more on, you know, reaching out to Native American organizations, if that's something you have experience in, or whoever input that would love to hear a little more on that.
This is Angela. So I am the Dean of Fine and Applied Arts at ARC, so I oversee culinary, but one of the projects I'm working on is actually being a tribal liaison. It's kind of formalizing now. So I'm working with, you know, Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians, as well as UAIC and Wilton, just a little bit of outreach, trying to see if we can get a culinary cohort together, but things of that nature. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and in other communities as well, but that one's just one I just happen to have personal experience with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think too, those populations can often be overlooked You know, even I'm from Placerville, and I, you know, went to school with kids who are from the Miwok tribe, and I actually worked at Red Hawk Casino when I was in college. But I think too, it's often overlooked. So I'm so glad that you're doing that outreach. It's really important.
I work a bit with Seca Hills olive oil. We have since, you know, we launched them, and they are the Ojete tribe. That is their product, as well as they have a wine, they have olive oil, and they do have a workable farm, but you can't buy from them because it's just basically enough for their, you know, beautiful spa and casino business. But in support, you know, we try to support them. They're my #1 olive oil that I mentioned first, or that we take if we have to take gifts to New York or someplace else in the country, Arizona. I always take their olive oil.
Absolutely, thank you. And I saw someone just added to, you know, educating employees about the opportunity the company has for growth and longevity at the company. I think that's incredibly important too. You know, when people are trying to think about their futures and what their lives are going to look like. Exactly. I think we have one more question, and if we don't have time, if it's you know, hard to put it into the Mentimeter, we can just answer aloud here. Yeah, one more question. Yeah, any other suggestions or feedback that you would provide to K-12, adult education, and community college RHT programs in the greater Sacramento region? Just any additional suggestions? I know we've talked a lot about, you know, soft skills and that real world experience, but if there's any other suggestions, would love to hear it.
I'd like to say something. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, from my point of view, you know, and I'm not an educator, but I'm working with educators now. You know, I'd like to see that there's some way that we could get, you know, partnerships, you know, and things in the community businesses into sort of the curriculum, right? Even what we're doing, we're trying to make it as part of the curriculum, because at first it was going to be something that was going to be outside, right? But if we could say, now we're trying to say, okay, but the educator is going to be there. This is part of the curriculum. There are benchmarks the students have to meet. You know, if we could do more of that, you know, instead of just saying, well, here's our career path and this is where we're going to go, but they're not really getting, you know, that feedback from the outside, you know, that would be really helpful. I don't know from the student side, but I know from the business side, it would be great for businesses to have that resource and to know that was happening. And I think there's a disconnect between the school and actually the businesses, right? So there's no real bridge there besides, you know, maybe the interviews that we do or things like that, or internships, but make that maybe even a closer relationship. But that's just my point of view.
I think that's such a good idea to make it part of the curriculum, because in all honesty, there's students who, if it's not, you know, a required course for graduation, they might not even look into it. But if you build it into the curriculum there and sort of make it a required field, it gives them such a wealth of knowledge that they wouldn't have had otherwise. No, I think that's great.
Okay, I'm trying to type in as fast as I can, so I'll just say it.
You're fine.
I am such a big supporter of ag in the classroom through the Farm Bureau, and it has a K, and we've gone up into the 12 now programs that are totally free. They really educate so many kids up and down the state of California in food and agriculture, and all the jobs, from flying jets or jet fuel and all kinds of things, right? Not just farming. And I think that having our kids learn some of the basic about just as basic as it can get. This is what grows and this is how many jobs come from it in our state. So when we say the word ag, we don't imagine a little red tractor with a farmer with a straw hat on it. That we realize that, you know, there's so many different jobs within agriculture.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. We actually just had our Valley Vision hosted a climate justice and jobs summit a couple of weeks ago, and some of it was focusing on especially some of the green jobs in agriculture I think are also coming to the Sacramento area, you know, and just sort of all that entails. It was interesting for me to learn, because I hadn't really known a lot about that. And I think just, yeah, expanding some of those opportunities and knowledge of them would be great. And I think we're going to get, yeah, exactly. Well, it's just interesting too, even learning about like green farming or how like the housing industry in Sacramento affects some of the land that we used to farm. It's interesting looking at all of that.
Land use, yeah.
I think we're going to get pulled back into the main session shortly, but
seeing some answers come in. Yeah, I think I mentioned it routinely throughout the panel, but I was really pleased to hear with how much general and specific topics from the panelists really dovetailed with the 21st century skills that has already been built, refined, and adapted a little bit. Now there's different thoughts out there for us community college folks about that, but yeah, I think it's a great framework from which to start. I mentioned, but I'm teaching a guest services boot camp for 3 hours each afternoon this week remotely to adult learners in hospitality and culinary in Sierra County, centered around a lot of those concepts of self-awareness, adaptability, communication etiquette, and social diversity awareness. Let's open it up to you folks. Feel free to continue populating that and also just chime in verbally. And I am in classroom mode, so I might just start calling on people if I can, if we don't get any volunteers. As we used to say in my Spanish class, volunteers or victims?
So Josh, I'll jump in here. I'm obviously on the industry side, so the industry focused is mine along with the jobs on that side. And I think that the community colleges are getting really, really good at tailoring their programs and being able to adopt the newest and the latest so that they have a good quickness to basically satisfy those jobs. I mean, I look at community colleges as filling a need and really kind of teaching those skills, but then getting those people in the workforce and getting those people out in the real world, so to speak. So that quickness and that reaction that you guys have, especially with the program that you've been mentioning all morning here, sounds wonderful. And so keep up the good work and keep those connections to the industry going.
Thank you. Thanks, Lynn. I know internally we kind of may often chide ourselves that timeliness and responsiveness have not always been our greatest strengths. So it's good to hear that on the industry side you see and value that effort. Somebody else want to jump in?
Hi, my name is Rios Musa, and I'm a career technical education coordinator for Placer School for Adults. So I basically coordinate career pathways for our students to get them from where they are into a new career, new work, making minimum wage or living wages. So we have welding, construction, health career, office, business, and finance, but I'm looking also to expand to hospitality and restaurants and hotel. So any chance we could work closely, partnership network with local restaurants, hotels, to open that opportunity to train students to work, you know, in this industry would be great and helpful. So anybody wants to reach out, and I'll be more than happy to work with.
Ari, I do not have any staff. You will be hearing me. That is pretty much my bailiwick. I do have a background in adult ed and Lake Tahoe. We have a couple of boot camps in culinary and guest services that have been history approved, piloted, or approved for non-credit, depending on the course. So there's a lot of good stuff we can bring straight to you and hopefully help build some connections.
Great, and we've been working closely with Sierra College to give our students credit for the classes that they take with us, like welding and my business office professional, which is Microsoft Office for the workplace. So I'm hoping to expand that to more.
Great. Yeah, and we see adult ed as a critical pipeline for some of these industries we talked about today. So maybe you and I can get a Zoom next week or so.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it.
Does anybody else want to chime in?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Walker. I'm a CTE specialist for Sacramento Academic and Vocational Academy. It's a high school. We have quite a few CTE pathways. What we're working on right now, because we have a population of more, it's like an alternative school, right? Students are choosing to go to the school because traditional school doesn't work for them. What we're really trying to foster among our students is the ability to speak about themselves, right, with confidence and articulation. And so I would say for these, all of these elements that are in the Mentimeter, we want our students to be able to talk about and speak to what they're good at and what they've learned.
And have you seen, I know I'm not making any money or anything off this, but have you seen the 21st Century Skills curriculum? Are you familiar with that out of the community colleges? Cool, just making sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know it's kind of spread broadly across the state, but some folks haven't yet dealt with it. So it's the best answer that we have at this point to all these critical needs that are up and running. So, thank you.
3 of our teachers are actually going through the training these Saturdays, last Saturday, the next 2 Saturdays with Sierra College for the 21st century. So we can implement that in our training also with the adult school.
Cool. Yeah, I'm working on seeing if we can keep those trainings running across the far north. I know they're doing a good job of it already, but I think the more the merrier at this point. So, great. Anybody else want to chime in on this one before we move on to our next question? Okay, I think we are doing well on time, so we'll move ahead. So now we don't want to ask too much of our industry folks, but we do know this is a two-way relationship. So we wanted to kind of share from the educator side a little bit more. What do we think some steps are that employers in California, granted who are under tremendous burden and tremendous challenge right now, just with everything they've got going on, trying to come out of the pandemic and deal with reopening and all the challenges we heard about today. But what are some ways that we can kind of use our feedback to give them some ideas about incentivizing and promoting entry into and upskilling in these sectors? The Mentimeter should be ready for answers. So. I'm not sure if folks are inputting. This is actually, in fairness, my first time using this software, so hopefully I haven't put us into some sort of snag here.
So Josh, while people are typing along here, I'll try and answer the question from an employer standpoint or from an industry standpoint. And one thing that we've learned during the COVID is our people are everything. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the continued education and trying to hold on to those employees. We now have a super good look at what training and reemployment looks like, and we don't want to do that. So if we can keep the employees engaged, keep them up moving through the career ladder and keep them continuing the education, I think certifications are probably going to be a way to go, because those are going to be portable, not just over the hotel industry, but over other industries as well. And so we'll try and keep them going in terms of learning. And I think that's probably going to be where we're going to go. We're going to invest a lot more into the people that we have rather than investing into the people that we're just getting. And I think that's always, before the pandemic, I would say that we weren't exactly the best in that. And coming out of the pandemic, I think we're going to get a whole lot better just because we're going to need to.
Yeah, and Lynn, while we've got you, I know one of the big concerns on our side is always looking at entry-level wages and living wages. I'm sure you're very aware of. And I know that you folks have been negotiating the increase in minimum wage in California before all this started. So just as from the 10,000-foot view, can you speak a little bit about that ongoing balance of paying those wages and how you guys look at that, especially in entry-level and medium-level positions, maybe?
Yeah, so the entry-level positions, you're always going to have the housekeeping position that is going to be entry level. And so that's always usually going to be, unless it's in a metro area and you've got a lot of competition, that's going to start at the minimum. Pretty much every other job in California is starting above that. And so we need that to attract people. Whenever I get on a national call and they start talking about minimum wage and you hear about wages in the Southeast, you're just like, yeah, I'm already giving my guy $17 an hour. So, you know, this doesn't really apply to us. So that furor that we have across the nation, that you'll get everywhere outside of the coast on either side, isn't really in California. And we're all about benefits and people and all that. You know, I made a comment earlier during the panel that 82% of the positions we're looking for are full-time. And so there is an incredible opportunity for people to come into the market, hold on to those people, incent them more, and give them the skills to move up as we make room for more people coming up. We're always going to need more people, and we're always going to need more people with people skills.
Yeah, there are certainly automation and AI concerns, but people skills and service are never going away. So on the educational side, I'm seeing some good answers here. Does anybody else want to jump in and try to hold the iron to Lynn's feet, so to speak? No, joking entirely. I know Lynn had spoken to, as well as I think a couple of our other panelists, to their already existing interest to kind of develop that career exploration piece that we're seeing in the middle box there. So I think that's an area we can chip away at. Does anybody else have anything they want to throw out on this topic?
This is Royce Pollard. I'm actually the general manager of the DoubleTree. We're a 450-room hotel in Sacramento. And you know, one of the things that we found very interesting, we had one high school that would come visit us every year and bring people who were interested in our industry. And I would have different department heads present to them, and there was never a lack of, they were all passionate, but they had no idea what we offered. They knew about front desk, they knew about housekeeping, but we're a little city. I mean, I have 33,000 square feet of meeting space. I have engineers who specialize in HVAC or electrical or general engineers. I have a whole staff of 60 people that just do banquet setup and serving. I have a culinary team that specializes in many different things, and they just didn't know that. And so I would love to do more educational things with these people, and to get my chef in front of these kids and talk to them about his development from being a dishwasher to being the chef of a $10 million organization. It was exciting to them to see how you could do that with the right training and spending the time in there. So I highly recommend anything we can do like that.
Without hijacking here, and Kim, I want to put you on the spot. I know you're a lot more experienced than I am with this, but in the couple years that I've been doing this work, we've seen there's a strong perception that a couple of our panelists spoke to, and I think it's been reinforced by labor market data on our side, that there just aren't really careers, there aren't living wage careers in this sector. And every time we talk to industry, we hear differently. I think it seems to me, and with my limited knowledge, that there's a chance to kind of connect closer with employers and see where the disconnect is. But Kim, as somebody that uses that information to kind of make and drive those investment decisions, is there anything you could help us understand on that topic?
Yeah, I think we silo our programs quite a bit into the stereotypical positions that we think are out there. And in this area in particular, we have a culinary program. A lot of people say, oh, well, you're not going to make much money in the labor market. The salary data out there shows that oftentimes that's the case, but they don't look at the whole career trajectory. And to Royce's point, you know, those are things that as educators, we think about specific like top codes that we're going to put programs in. And we don't think about the cross-sector things where a general manager might be getting a great job in this industry. And so we need to look at maybe connecting some of the RHT area to our business programs that we have and management programs that we have, and also mentioned engineering programs that we have. All of these things that it takes to run a hotel is mind-boggling, and it applies to so many of the programs that we have. So that point is really, really well taken. And it's just not, I think we're getting there. I think we're starting to look at cross-sector types of skill sets that can be applied in these different areas. So that's a new thing, I think, for us, is to think outside of the traditional little tracks that you see people going into in these career education programs.
Thank you. I think I know one thing I can focus on for the next 9 months or so.
I have something to offer in there, just an observation, basically, is my husband and I are both here at Roseville High School. He's in economics and math teacher, coach, and I'm in the culinary hospitality side. And we came to teaching about 12 years ago as our second passion careers. And very few high school teachers come from industry or any like work experience. So there's an absolute tunnel vision, and it's so frustrating to he and I especially, because we see all how it all marries together in one organization, whether it's a small business or a giant hotel. That there's something about like an engineer has to be a chemical engineer and only that type of engineer. It's mind-boggling. I don't know how we get past it, because we've been working on this for about 15 years now, and it seems like it's still that same reticence. We're just now bringing a business curriculum back into the high school because business wasn't determined as being applicable enough or a career pathway. It's like everything's business. Everything is economics, everything. So if you have any ideas of like that, or how we can communicate with our leadership, I think our board members get it, but I'm not sure a lot of people at the site level get it.
I'll jump in here. I think that kind of goes back to Royce's comment as well, and that we have careers. I mean, we're there, and the perception is that hey, it's I guess I'll use the phrase a dead end job, or this is a temporary part-time thing, something for students. And yes, we do need a lot of people, and so we need a lot of employees to make it go. But the careers in the hotel business, I mean, you can go work for a company that, one of the big hotel companies. You can work for Hilton. It's got all kinds of transfer opportunities. It's got all kinds of job opportunities. It's got excellent benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So, even at the housekeeping level, in some of the major cities, we've got housekeepers making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, and they've been there for 15, 20, 35 years. They like it. They got the benefits. It's a good gig for them. It's indoors, it's air conditioned, a relatively good working environment. So, even for that secondary English speaker that doesn't want to pursue the education side of it, you can still make a career at some of the lower levels in our industry. As Roy said, we're little cities. We've got everything. The portability on it is always so keen to me, and that's more on the restaurant side. Hey, I was a bartender, or hey, I was a food server, and wherever I move to next, I've always got that skill to fall back on. Same with hotels that we have to get in there and do that for. So definitely understand that nobody's been in the industry on the educator side, especially at the high school level. All the parents, we want our kids to be, doctors and lawyers and astronauts and everything else. So when you start talking about, hotel and restaurant jobs, that perception just isn't there yet. And so we need to talk about that perception a lot more and show them what the possibilities are. If we go home and the kid's all excited about working in a hotel or a restaurant, it usually doesn't move the meter for the parent. So we have to educate the parents as well in terms of what the perception of our industry is. Sorry, kind of a long-winded answer there.
That's very true.
My weakness as a moderator is not cutting off good conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that is really true. We face the same issue with our agriculture programs, especially since we have about 30% of our population as Latinx students. And when a student goes home and tells their parents that they want to get a credential or a degree in ag, they're thinking, oh no, they're going to be out, picking fruit, picking vegetables, this is not why I want my child to go to school. And so there's so much education that we need a better marketing campaign of what it is that all of these types of jobs include, and that they are living wage careers that with upward career mobility. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And that's what my statewide colleagues and I had shifted to before the pandemic, was really just I mean, it's a strong word, but destigmatizing, I hate to use it, but we're talking about people skills, as Lynn keeps hitting, jobs that can take you all over the world to cool places, helping people have lifetime experiences. So we just got the 1 minute mark from Jesse. I don't think we have much time to tap into this, but we've gathered so much great information today from all of you folks that I think if we had to skip one, we've gotten a lot of suggestions and a lot of feedback. So if anybody has anything else to toss out there, we've got a minute or so, but I just want to thank you all once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you hit leave breakout room under the more options, that should send us all back into the main room, or Jesse will pull us through the ether momentarily.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
You on the other side.
I think we're all back now, so we can share discussion highlights. I don't know who's group 1, 2, or 3, so I guess I will just say the group that Josh was in. Do you want to go first?
I revealed my weaknesses as a mediator and didn't get us onto question 3 and did not nominate a sharer. So does anybody in my group want to just kind of take a stab at summing up what we talked about? It's all in the word cloud, of course, but.
You know where the word cloud is?
The Mentimeter, I apologize. I feel like you've all heard plenty from me today in between much more experienced and intelligent people. But.
Anyone? I'll speak.
Thank you.
We just most recently talked about just the issue of perception about career pathways and communicating with parents and counselors at the high school level. Engineering is definitely a part of hospitality. Marketing and culinary and all of that sort of thing. They can find pathways within the industry with any skill set, and it seems like there's still a pigeonholed mentality that if you're going to be construction, you're going to work on a certain thing. You may not be in the hotel industry, but there's so much crossover. Just overcoming that perception that they're entry-level jobs as opposed to career pathways.
Great insight. Anything else from your group, Josh?
Use the overly heavy word destigmatization, which is really what we see around these sectors these days. We also talked about how some of the labor market data that we see on the college side tends to unfortunately reinforce the picture that there are not high earnings in these fields. There are not careers, they're entry-level jobs. And every time we get great industry folks in the room, they are aghast at that perception. And so how can we connect better to better tell those stories, get those numbers? And then on the first question, there was just a lot of validation and reinforcement around the skills that our panelists really outlined. Those soft skills, employability skills, intrapersonal skills, whatever you want to call them, that are represented in 21st century skills, but that we could do a better job of fleshing out, certainly contextualizing for the hospitality and tourism industries.
Thank you. Caitlin, how about your group? What happened in there?
Yeah, we also, discussed a lot about, soft skills and also some of that real world experience. I think Sue from our group mentioned a really great program that they're doing with their students. Sue, I'd love if you could share.
Okay, here I am on the spot. So as I was explaining to our group, we're holding a community expo in October, and we're actually starting our student leadership program with this event. We're pairing students with businesses in town and in our area, and they have to work together to tell the story of what the business is, how it works, why it's important to the community, some of the struggles that they, have to go through, and all of that. And then on the day of the expo, they're actually going to be in the expo booth together, but the student and the business are going to work together to build it, and then the student will give the pitch. So the student will be in a pitch contest, and they'll have to tell that story, and then they'll, will have recommendation letters and things like that that they can take back if they do a good job. But in the meantime, it's going to be part of the curriculum to where they have to meet benchmarks along the way. And on my side, we're going to have benchmarks that the businesses have to meet along the way with their student. So hopefully we'll get a really good dialogue going on there, and we'll get, maybe some jobs coming out of there. You never know. That's in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Sue. I loved hearing about that program. I just wanted to show it to everyone as well. And Renee, what about you? How did things go in your group?
We had some pretty vibrant discussion. We also, Josh, we did not get to nominating who was going to speak. So in the last 17 seconds, I was like, anybody want to do it? And so I'll start. And then if anybody wants to pitch in, we did talk about, I appreciate the term that An was using, essential skills instead of soft skills, if that's right, if that's how he brands it. And that came up a lot for us, as well as micro credentials and the ability to build skills, particularly for individuals that are previously incarcerated, and be able to build those micro credential skills that are recognized by employers so that they can have entry level into the industry easier. Those were a couple of things that came up for us. We did also talk quite a bit about internships. And I'll just open it up to anybody who was in our group if you have anything additional you want to add. All right. Well, we had a great time. I appreciated the breakout because we got to have a little more discussion in smaller group settings. So it worked out really well. And I'm going to hand it over to Josh. I think he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the community colleges, and then we'll wrap up with y'all.
Yeah, just really wanted to outline some next steps. We want to pursue a lot of opportunities to partner that we've talked about today with industry to get closer. We have curriculum advisory efforts underway across certainly a couple in Sacramento and in the regions. So be looking to try to bring in some more industry partners there to get some more upfront timely information about all of these changes. And certainly reviewing all of the tremendously valuable information that we've gotten in today. I know myself, and I'm sure the Valley Vision team is looking forward to sitting down and unpacking this in the next week or so and kind of looking at all this very dense information. But yeah, as Lynn and other panelists pointed out, things like job shadowing, internships, even that top level of apprenticeship, seeing what we can do there. I also just wanted to throw my contact info out there once more. I've been able to connect with quite a few of you over the course of today. So thank you for reaching out. But if anybody wants to drop me a line in any capacity and just kind of open an individual dialogue, I would greatly thank you and welcome that. And then I just wanted to take a chance to redirect folks to take a look at our kind of my statewide team website. My colleagues in Orange County and in the Bay Area and in kind of the Central Valley, Mother Lode region, a little south of Sacramento, have a website with a ton of resources, a lot more information on the different community college programs. And specifically, I wanted to direct our attention here to this ICANN program. My state director, Joy, did a great job with John Cordova, the health state director, in putting together a series of 90-minute to 2-hour training modules that are self-driven, free of charge. They're available on our website, and they're contextualized for a number of different industries, including customer service, culinary, housekeeping. So they're based on, I believe, Department of Public Health guidelines around infectious control in the workplace. They're ready to go right now. We're working on translating some into Spanish and making them more accessible and valuable. So right now, your students or employees can go out and take advantage of those. They come with the option for a certificate or a digital badge. So if you visit our website, in addition to all the other information there, there's a nice big yellow banner at the top that should grab your eye. And we encourage folks to just use that resource. It's available. It's, you know, developed through channels and resources from the state, and it should be hopefully pretty helpful as people re-enter this world of ours. So I guess we've got a few more minutes if anybody has any other closing thoughts or questions they want to throw out there. I just want to thank everybody for their time and participation and making this a really awesome event today. We really appreciate it. And especially the Valley Vision team. They are just rock stars.
Thank you. Wanted to thank particularly the industry folks that hang on there with us through the whole event and into the breakouts. It's really useful for us when we have industry or business folks in the discussion, bringing together the faculty perspective and the industry perspective, as well as we have some K through 12 folks who are on the call. So, you know, thank you to our industry folks, particularly Lynn, Bobbin, and Bahar. Thank you to our faculty who've had to pivot and make the, I mean, pivot's overused, but I don't know what, it's the only positive term I guess we can all come up with for what's happened. So, you know, thank you for all your work in bringing education online as fast as you had to keep education going, especially for so many dislocated workers who needed, you know, something to do, some sort of productivity during this time. And for our K through 12 folks who are looking to build the pipeline and extend the pipelines and partner together with community college, we want to thank you for that. Also, our workforce development partners, we wouldn't be here without you. You help marry together the whole system. So we're thankful to all of you and just really appreciate the time that everyone put into today. We will be compiling the notes and sending them out along with all of the post-event materials. So you will receive the full recording, including all breakouts, as well as the notes and agenda documents. And I particularly wanted to thank, so Josh, Jesse, and Caitlin and I have been meeting regularly for a long time to plan this event. It probably looks miraculous. It's not, it takes a little bit of work. So a particular shout out to all of them for the work that they do behind the scenes to make it work. And with that, we may be giving you an extra 5 minutes to your day before you probably need to jump on your next Zoom. So in the interest of hospitality, we'll give you that time back. Thank you again for all your efforts, and you'll be receiving post-event materials from us.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.